Chapter 1606, Suffering the Consequences of His Actions. B***tch, you have indeed appeared. Kai Miao said sinisterly. He no longer had any dreams about Empress Wanxing. He indeed still wanted to possess the Empress, but did not want to do so through courting her. Instead, he wanted to take her through brute force. He now had such strength. Kneel. He made his move, incredibly dark thoughts filling his heart. He wanted to have the Empress kneel in front of him, and lick his toes. The Empress did not even bother to speak, and merely directed a slap at Kai Miao. Pa! But this time, Kai Miao was not struck. Instead, he managed to stretch out his arm to parry the blow in the nick of time, and stop this palm strike in its course. Ha! I am no longer the person I once was. Kai Miao laughed loudly. This feeling of strength was really too awesome. With a turn of his hand, he stretched out his hand to grab at the Empress's wrist. Even just a touch of her wrist would satisfy a little of his desire to take advantage of her. Seeing this scene, not just the disciples were furious, even the saints of the Hu clan couldn't help but frown. A mere ant like him still dared to touch a woman that they had their eyes on? The Empress naturally would not allow him to succeed. Her fingers swept out, and delivered a frightening sword chi. Pang, pang, pang. The two of them endlessly exchanged blows at close range, but their respective abilities were unexpectedly equal. Neither was able to get the upper hand. I can be even stronger. Kai Miao shouted loudly. He took a deep breath and exhaled. True enough, the power within him was bubbling. Every star expanded again, reaching an extreme size. They could not grow any bigger. Even just the slightest bit bigger would mean that they would explode. I am an invincible king tier. Kai Miao shot out a punch at the Empress. The killing formation activated, but compared with his own battle prowess, the might of the killing formation was actually negligible. Ling Han watched from outside, and internally assessed, about the standard of over 2 million stars. In a forbidden land, there was no small number of such prodigies, but they had all reached that level through their own cultivation. Kai Miao, on the other hand, would only be short-lived. Ling Han could see very clearly that this kind of strength was obtained through paying the price of burning one's own life. After the battle ended, even if Kai Miao did not die, he would become a cripple. At most, he would live until reaching the 100 years limit of a mortal lifespan before dying of old age. This kind of strength. The Empress could handle it. The Empress's face was filled with pride. She used a celestial technique, and the darkness of the paramount night spread out. As an endless darkness enshrouded Kai Miao, he had absolutely no idea where the target of his attack was, even though he possessed extremely strong power. Not enough. Not enough. Yet Kai Miao shouted loudly, and struck out with both hands, creating a strong gale that dispersed the darkness by force. In front of absolute strength, indeed, nothing could stand in his way. The Empress was not discouraged, and through the movements of her hands, she used the flying dragon's shadow hands. Pa, 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 pa. One after another, palm strikes landed on Kai Miao. The speed was much too fast, and Kai Miao was unable to dodge at all. Kai Miao stumbled from the attacks, but what was stunning was the fact that his present defenses were also extremely shocking. His expression didn't even change after sustaining so many palm strikes, as if he had become completely immortal. Because this was the ultimate glory that came from completely forcing out all of one's potential and vitality, Kai Miao's present recovery ability was comparable to having cultivated the indestructible Heaven's Scroll. Though the punch caused him serious injury, he had completely recovered in the next instant. After a dozen oversteps, Kai Miao finally regained his footing. Through a moment of sensing, he realized that he did not have the slightest bit of injury. Then, he couldn't help but laugh raucously. This was strength that had reached a level that even he himself could barely believe it. As expected of the ways of a saint king, it was nature-defying. It's my turn. He leaped back, and began his counterattack. However, it was only his power that had been boosted, and he did not cultivate any celestial technique, so the power of his attacks was actually very limited. How could he possibly defeat the Empress? The two of them fought fiercely. One showed endless numbers of celestial techniques, while the other's recovery ability was nature-defying, and he could recover immediately no matter how powerful the attacks he sustained, which resulted in a stalemate. The Empress couldn't help but be angered. With a thought, she finally used her bloodline ability, or rather the ability of the 9 Deaths Heaven Art. One after another, doppelgangers walked out from her body, and there were suddenly 10 Empresses standing quietly in the arena. The art of doppelgangers? Kai Miao was unafraid. How could mere copies match the original? They naturally were mainly meant for confusion, and their battle prowess could be ignored completely. The Empress moved. Boom, 10 bodies moved at the same time, each using a different celestial technique. Even Ling Han was dumbfounded at this sight. Darkness of the Paramount Night, Flying Dragon's Shadow Hands, Tide of the Ages, Lightning Sword Technique. Each doppelganger was independently using a different celestial technique, and they directed their attacks at Kai Miao. Peng, 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 peng. Kai Miao was attacked fiercely. His recovery ability was indeed amazing, but he could not hold up to the simultaneous attacks of celestial techniques from 10 Empresses. Very soon, he was spurting out blood from his mouth. Then, his whole body was spraying out blood. It could be clearly seen that Kai Miao's body was completely misshapen as multiple bones pierced out of his skin. I am invincible. Kai Miao roared out angrily. He wanted to pull himself together and make a comeback, yet suddenly paled in shock. His power was abruptly beginning to decline, and at a very rapid pace. In an instant, his power had fallen to rock bottom. He was far from his original state, what more being invincible in the whole world. He had aged in an instant, his skin becoming loose, his hair turning gray, and his face was covered with wrinkles. In a single instant, he had become an old man that was close to his death. He struggled, wanting to get back to his feet, yet he did not even have the slightest bit of strength left. It was all wasted effort. The Empress had forced him to his limits, and the battle had not yet ended, but his life essence was already no longer sufficient for him to continue burning it. Not only had he been beaten back to his original state, he had even become immortal. With a wave of the Empress's hand, her 9 doppelgangers returned to her body. She did not even look at Kai Miao, and directly walked back to sit beside Ling Han. She had withdrawn her aggressive bearing, and became a gentle little woman. Cough. Cough. In the arena, Kai Miao was still throwing up blood. His cultivation level was completely gone, and with such heavy injuries, he was already close to death. He looked in Hu Luo's direction, and was still having his deluded dreams, anticipating that Hu Luo would step out and save him, but this naturally was only a mere delusion. The members of the Hu clan only smirked coldly. They were only using Kai Miao like a lackey in the first place. How could they possibly care about the life of a dog? Meanwhile, the Star Sand Saint nodded at the Tranquil Heart Saint, and the Tranquil Heart Saint understood his signal. He leaped out, and picked Kai Miao up. The saintly power inside him surged and temporarily suppressed Kai Miao's injuries. This person cannot die so easily, he said. All the disciples had thought that the Tranquil Heart Saint wanted to save Kai Miao, but when they heard this, they couldn't help but nod. That was right. How could he be allowed such an easy death after betraying the academy? Weren't you very arrogant? Just continue being arrogant now then. Hu Luo was uncaring, and waved his hand, saying, "Continue." A member of the Hu clan leaped out. He surveyed the masses, and finally fixed his eyes on Ling Han. He said, "I am Hu Yangchen, and would like to seek some guidance from Brother Ling." They were finally getting serious. Ling Han smiled calmly, stood up, and replied, "Since you are in such a rush to die, how could I not oblige?" Hu Yangchen couldn't help but be greatly enraged. He was in the pinnacle level of the Eternal River tier, and had further cultivated close to 3 million stars. You are only in the high extreme of the Eternal River tier, so where did you get such confidence from? Wasn't he afraid of being forced to eat his own words? Then let us have a battle. Chapter 1607, Killed with a Single Strike. Hu Yangchen crooked a finger at Ling Han. He had a mission, and that was to force Ling Han into a corner. No matter who was standing behind Ling Han, they would definitely appear then. There was no need to worry about the Star Sand Saint and the other saints, as Grand Elder would naturally be suppressing them. Ling Han leaped out, a faint smile on his face. Ling Han, I will give you a sincere warning, hand over the treasure trove of the Heavenly River King, and I can leave you with a full corpse, Hu Yangchen stated calmly. In his eyes, his victory in this battle was naturally assured, and it was not worth his notice at all. He was one that had formed close to 3 million stars. Ling Han took one look at Hu Yangchen and said, since that is the case, I will also give you a choice. Would you like to be dismembered, or have your bones shattered and your ashes scattered into the wind? Tit for tat, neither showing any weakness. All the disciples strongly balled their hands into fists, feeling their anger vented. Previously, they had been suppressed too harshly. It was only an impulsive action on Hu Luo's part, and it was almost enough for Kai Miao to surpass a god, defeating a good many big shots in quick succession. Thankfully, the Empress was strong enough, and had suppressed Kai Miao. But Kai Miao was still a disciple of the Academy, after all, so even if he was suppressed, so what? It could only be claimed that a traitor had been dealt with, and it could only be considered a completely superficial blow to the Hu clan, but if Hu Yangchen could be killed, that would be a severe blow to the Hu clan. Of course, the majority of them were only dreaming. With a Saint King in the sidelines, did Ling Han dare deliver a fatal blow? Even if he did, would he be able to succeed? Previously, the members of the Hu clan had watched indifferently from the sidelines because they did not take Kai Miao to heart, but how could that possibly be the same for Hu Yangchen? What a sharp tongue! Hu Yangchen smirked coldly. With a thought, his silvery river appeared. Wang, innumerable stars shone with blazing light in the silvery river. Pooh! All the disciples spluttered, all of them gaping, completely unable to believe their eyes. Close to 3 million stars. Was this not power on the level of saints? No wonder he dared be so arrogant, no wonder the Hu clan was so powerful. Just because of this, everyone would have to admit that they were impressed. Too strong. Ling Han could not possibly be a match for that. Senior brother Ling, he is in the pinnacle level of the Eternal River tier, and you are only in the high extreme. This battle is unjust. That's right. This is unfair, you don't have to fight. A great many people said thus to Ling Han. If he forced himself in this battle, it would only result in his meaningless death. Still planning to flee now? Hu Yangchen smirked coldly. He delivered a palm strike, and the power of his silvery river surged, taking the form of a massive blue bird of prey that grabbed out at Ling Han. A cold flash flickered in Ling Han's eyes. His full power burst beneath his feet, and he suddenly charged out at Hu Yangchen. The blue bird of prey arrived, yet Ling Han made no move to dodge or hide. Was he seeking his own death? Hu Yangchen smirked coldly, and all the disciples were watching anxiously. Banishment. Ling Han said softly. In the instant the blue bird of prey arrived in front of him, it suddenly disappeared. Xiao, he was completely unhindered, and had already arrived in front of Hu Yangchen. How could this be possible? Hu Yangchen's eyes widened. No matter what, he could not believe this. His attack had actually disappeared into thin air. If it had been dispelled, or dodged, he could accept that, and had even long since prepared his next move, but he had never imagined that Ling Han would actually be able to charge right up to him in a head-on confrontation. This was completely outside of his expectations, and he was completely caught off guard. Boom, Ling Han's fist reached its target. Humph. Yet Hu Yangchen did not panic. Though he was a little passive, his power overwhelmed Ling Han by who knew how many times, and even if he could only presently use a 10,000th of his power, he would still be able to overwhelm Ling Han. Merely in terms of power, he could even be comparable to a saint. Was that not awesome enough? Ling Han's punch landed, and only at this moment did the 27 killing formations activate and explode with an endless battle prowess. What he wanted was an absolutely fatal attack, not allowing any opportunity for the members of the Hu clan to save him. All the saints could tell that there were killing formations inscribed in his body, and their number was not small either, but aside from a saint that focused on formations like the Tranquil Heart Saint, none of them were able to tell how frightening so many killing formations added together would be. In truth, even the Tranquil Heart Saint could only make a guess because no one had been able to reach this extent previously. Since that was the case, how could he make an accurate estimate? If he had stimulated the killing formations the moment he moved, the saints would definitely be able to tell how terrifying it was, but their might only exploded in a burst when the punch arrived at its target, and even if the saints of the Hu clan wanted to stop it, they were too late. Pung! His fist landed, and without the slightest doubt, Hu Yangchen directly exploded into a shower of blood from the impact. Some of his blood even spurted onto Ling Han. He did not dodge or hide, bathing in the blood. Today, he was going to launch a massacre and kill saints again. Xiao, at this moment, the blue bird of prey that Hu Yangchen had shot out suddenly appeared, charging out at the place where there was no longer anyone standing. It was now completely meaningless. A dead silence fell. Who could have imagined that a big shot that had formed close to 3 million stars would actually be killed with a single punch from someone in the high extreme of the eternal river tier? At first, Hu Luo was stunned, which was followed by thunderous rage. Turbid air spurted from his nostrils, creating ripples in the space itself. The Star Sand Saint beside him almost collapsed onto the ground. This had nothing to do with willpower and courage. It was completely suppression from a superior cultivation level. His initial plans were to force Ling Han into desperate straits, then no matter who was behind Ling Han, they would definitely appear, and in that way, he would be able to decide whether it was better to battle or make peace based on the circumstances. However, he had not thought that he had not managed to force out Ling Han's backer, and instead caused an outstanding descendant of his to die. His emotions were stirred. Boom, his whole head of white hair fluttered, and there were flames interwoven among his hair. That was his rage taking solid form, which showed clearly what kind of terrible mood he was presently in. Dongping, apprehend this brat, he said in a gruff voice, issuing a command to one of the saints. Yes, Grand Elder. That saint obeyed the command. That was the 5th saint of the Hu clan, and he was also a medium saint. His name was Hu Dongping. Senior. The Star Sand Saint stood up, wanting to stop him, yet with a glare from Hu Luo, he immediately sat back down. In front of a Saint King, even if he was a great saint, that was completely not enough. The Tranquil Heart Saint and the others all frowned deeply. If a medium saint made his move, even they were no match for him, what more Ling Han? Boy, who is standing behind you that dares make an enemy of our Hu clan? Hu Dongping asked coldly. Ling Han smiled calmly. Afraid? If you're afraid, just admit it frankly. Come, kneel down and call me grandfather, and I can consider sparing your wretched life. Wretched life your sister, watch out for my savage heaven kick. Xiao, a shadow streaked past, and as expected, a paw was kicking out towards Ling Han. It was the large black dog. Ling Han waved a hand casually, and the large black dog suddenly disappeared. He calmly took a step back, and Shua, the large black dog reappeared, and naturally missed the target of his attack. Peng, he fell onto the ground, causing a stir in the dust on the ground. Damn brat, what kind of strange and bizarre technique have you learnt this time? The large black dog scratched his neck with one of his hind legs. Just don't seek your own suffering, Ling Han said smilingly. On the other side, Hu Dongping was almost half dead with fury. Just how much did this boy and dog look down on him that they were actually chatting idly right in front of him? Die. He stretched open his right hand, and pressed it down on both Ling Han and the large black dog at the same time. Chapter 1608, Slaughtering Saints Again. Why are you attacking me as well? The large black dog broke into a run. This human is really too despicable. Brat Han, beat him up for your grandpa dog, thrash him until he admits defeat. Its speed was really exaggeratingly quick. It actually managed to race out of the range of attack of a saint in the nick of time, and then stood on its hind legs, patting its iron underwear. If you're not convinced, come bite your grandpa dog then. If you manage to bite me, grandpa dog will gift this supreme treasure to you. Everyone was rendered speechless. This large black dog was as despicable as always, but they did not have the leisure to be distracted. The attack from a medium saint fell, and was already pressing down on the top of Ling Han's head. Small tower. Ling Han called out internally. Wang, his cultivation level suddenly soared, spiking up to the peak stage of the consummate level of the Genesis tier in a single instant. He also delivered his own palm strike in a counterattack against Hu Dongping. Not good. Hu Luo suddenly stood up. Xiao, his figure streaked out, charging towards Ling Han. At this moment, he was exerting his full effort, and there were flashes of light flickering on him, forming vibrantly colorful patterns of great Tao. Pung. Unfortunately, he was too late. Ling Han's palm strike landed, and without the slightest bit of doubt, Hu Dongping was crushed into a stain of blood. There was not even the slightest bit of complete bone that could be found. Ah, Brat! Hu Luo roared out in fury to the heavens, his white locks dancing in the wind. His killing intent solidified, rolling out in waves. Meanwhile, the others were watching with dumbfounded shock. Fuck, he had slaughtered a saint again. Had you now become a specialist in slaughtering saints? Yet they did not know that Ling Han had been even more ruthless in the netherworld, killing more than 100 demon masters in a single go, and that was what true savagery was. The heaven and earth grieved, taking the form of a rain of blood, emotionally moved at the death of a saint. Great, well done, fantastic. The large black dog waved its behind at a distance, its iron underwear reflecting sunlight, showing how despicable it could be. Hu Luo's expression was filled with killing intent, and he suddenly tapped out a finger at the large black dog. A flash of light shot out, indescribably fast. Ling Han pressed down with a casual hand, and the large black dog immediately vanished. Only a whole breath's time after that ray of light streaked past did the large black dog suddenly reappear in its original position, looking completely dumbfounded. Brat, you dare to stop me? Hu Luo roared, striking out at Ling Han. Why would I not dare? Who do you think you are? Ling Han moved, greeting Hu Luo's incoming attack. Peng, their two attacks clashed, and a frightening power tore a rip in the space as multiple cracks appeared. He had blocked it. Everyone was in disbelief. Previously, Ling Han had surpassed a god because he had channeled a drop of celestial king blood essence, but now faced with a true saint king, he was still invincible. How could this be possible? No. Impossible. Kai Miao muttered, shuddering. He still had his delusions that Hu Luo would save him after everything was settled here, but seeing how powerful Ling Han was, he couldn't help but conceive a terrifying thought. You actually really merged the regulations of the two realms. Hu Luo inhaled sharply. On the surface, it seemed like they were equal, yet he was clear that he was weaker than Ling Han, a fact that he had only concealed. Ling Han was capable of merging the regulations of the two realms. This naturally was no secret in the heaven-crushing alliance, but Hu Luo could not imagine at all that an eternal river tier could suddenly possess the cultivation level of the Genesis tier, and even manage to merge the regulations of two realms at the level of the Genesis tier. This was practically like a dream. Surprised? Ling Han laughed loudly, charging towards Hu Luo. He channeled the nine heavens flame, which took the form of a blade of fire, and struck wildly at this old Saint King. Rather than calling it a surprise, it would be better to call it a shock. Only now did Hu Luo know. No wonder Ling Han dared strut back bravely like this to the immortal realm. As it turned out, he actually had an amazing method to release battle prowess on the level of the peak stage of the consummate level of the Genesis tier, and had furthermore merged the regulations of the two realms. If he wanted, wouldn't he be able to immediately tear open space and enter into the celestial realm? Yet this was only his wild imagination. Though Ling Han was very powerful now, this power and cultivation level did not belong to him, so there was no way that he could open the doors to the celestial realm. The other saints of the Hu clan could tell how strong Ling Han was by now, and the other Saint King immediately leaped out, joining forces with Hu Luo to attack Ling Han. "You come to deliver yourselves to death?" Ling Han asked menacingly. "The only one who will be dying is you," Hu Luo exclaimed. Since he already knew that Ling Han's confidence originated from himself, he naturally understood that there were no other forbidden lands allying together to target the Hu clan, and was relieved instead. As long as he killed Ling Han, that was fine. The inheritance of the Celestial King would be theirs. Die. He joined forces with another Saint King, beginning the strongest barrage of attacks at Ling Han. Ling Han casually parried a few strikes, and said, "You all probably don't know yet, right? I have killed at least 100 demon masters in the netherworld, and there were more than 20 heaven demons among them. With just the few of you now, it is far from enough." He had to be blabbering nonsense, Hu Luo and the other Saint King thought. Otherwise, their fighting spirit would definitely crumble in an instant. Whether you believe it or not, it doesn't matter. Within 3 moves, I will send you 2 to your deaths. Ling Han stimulated the 9 heavens flame. Though he would be able to win even without using this, it would definitely be impossible for him to kill the 2 of them in 3 moves. He aggressively suppressed them, and even if Hu Luo was a big shot among Saint Kings, so what? 1 move, 2, and he was already in desperate straits, and then with a strike from a flaming sword that he had formed from the 9 heavens flame, his physical body and soul were both burnt to nothing. When the other saints from the Hu clan saw this, they were all terrified, and hurriedly stretched open their golden pathways, planning to flee. Yet Ling Han used the banishing technique to throw them into the separate dimension, and when they came back out, he killed each with a single sword strike as if he was merely slaughtering animals. 6 saints were all eliminated practically in a single instant. All the others were numb with shock, and felt that this world was really too surreal. Though Ling Han had also killed a saint before, that was only one. Who had seen saints being killed in massive numbers as if they were just vegetables on the chopping block. Ling Han was really invincible. In the past, the means for his strength could not possibly last forever, as he had depended on only a single drop of Saint King blood essence, but now? Not only could he be even more powerful, he had even killed 2 Saint Kings this time. Just ask who else was still not convinced of his superior strength? Ling Han. Ling Han. Ling Han. The disciples all released a tsunami wave of cheers. This scene would eternally remain in their memory, and would also be passed down through the generations. Ling Han smiled at the masses, his expression of pride flashing past before quickly disappearing. This was not his true strength, and furthermore, his 3 power boosts had already been used up. If another saint came, even if it was only a small saint, he would only be able to hide inside the Black Tower. However, after this battle, his name would definitely be known throughout the world, and even the Forbidden Lands would be moved. Would they still dare make an enemy out of him? Who knew if Ling Han would still be able to show his might again? Ling Han took away the spatial spirit tools that the saints of the Hu clan possessed, and there were a large volume of cultivation resources among them, which he handed over to the academy. This was considered a small portion of his compensation to them. As for the rest, it would have to wait when he swept through the 8 stones forbidden land to get it back for them. The Hu clan still had a Saint King, and was still very powerful among the many forbidden lands, but this Saint King was not at the peak stage, and with so many saints dying all at once, the Hu clan would definitely begin to decline. Chapter 1609, Olive Branch. This battle was destined to have far-reaching effects, but for the moment, those effects would not be reflected, because the spreading of the news would need time. The universe was too colossal. Nothing changed in Ling Han's life. He continued to cultivate and related the matter of merging the regulations of the two realms to the Rain Emperor, Su Ran, Ding Ping and the others, and they, too, began to attempt to do the same. There were still regulations of the netherworld in the Black Tower. After cultivating beneath the reincarnation tree for a month, the notionless saint, Ding Ping, Zhou, Su Ran, and the others all shook their heads. They were completely unable to merge the regulations of the two realms. The two could not be merged at all. At most, they could just barely coexist, but once they exited the Black Tower, the regulations of the netherworld they had grasped would definitely be erased by the heaven and earth of the immortal realm. Only the Rain Emperor was still in seclusion, and 2 months later, he had successfully merged the regulations of the two realms of the lowest tier. Though it was the very lowest tier, it was enough to shock everyone. Where there was the first, there would be the second. It was only a matter of time. Ling Han, too, couldn't help but be incredibly impressed by this second brother of his. The Rain Emperor did not possess the Black Tower, nor did he cultivate any Celestial King technique. He had accomplished this all on his own, one step after another, creating a wide path that others would gasp in shock at. This was a true prodigy of martial arts. Previously, everyone had the alchemical pills that Ling Han had left behind. Thus, they were all close to the Eternal River tier by now, and with an Alchemy Emperor by their side, added with the fact that they themselves were prodigies, there was no need to worry about the comprehension of cultivation level. Even if they wanted their rate of cultivation to slow down, it was not possible. Ling Han nodded. Once everyone had advanced into the Eternal River tier, he would be able to consider improving the pill recipe so that the medicinal effects would not be so powerful, which would allow all of them to be able to use it. Of course, the fact that the medicinal effects were so violent also showed how powerful the effects could be, and if he adjusted the pill recipe, it would definitely lead to a great decline in the medicinal effects. He was again busy, studying pill recipes every day, or discussing the art of formations with the Tranquil Heart Saint while he continued to accumulate origin power. Breaking through to the consummate level of the Eternal River tier was close at hand. Another 3 months later, the Empress finally took a crucial step, and had formed 1,001 stars, officially advancing into the pinnacle level of the Eternal River tier. This drew a heavenly tribulation, but because the Empress had 9 doppelgangers, she could distribute the attacks that she sustained, which was equivalent to weakening the might of the heavenly tribulation by 10 times. Furthermore, her 9 doppelgangers could also simultaneously parry the heavenly tribulation, and the joined forces of the 10 of them would further weaken the heavenly tribulation by another 10 times, which was equivalent to her only having to sustain 1/100th of the might of the heavenly tribulation. It naturally was a piece of cake. Next, Ling Han was finally prepared, and also advanced into the consummate level, and began to endure his own heavenly tribulation. His heavenly tribulation would be frightening to others as he had to shatter his own godly bones so that they would be tempered during the heavenly tribulation. Wang, a golden path suddenly descended from the galaxy, and saintly might abruptly pervaded the area. The Star Sand Saint and the other saints all appeared. The visitor was definitely a saint. "I am Blue Feather, and I come from the White Rainbow Forbidden Land." The golden path dispersed, and a saint appeared. However, there were also 3 juniors behind him. They were all in the Eternal River tier, each of them having the bearing of giants among men. "Greetings, Senior." The Star Sand Saint bowed. This was a Saint King. The Blue Feather Saint King nodded. He looked towards the skies, and when he saw how Ling Han took the initiative to shatter his own godly bones to be tempered by the heavenly tribulation, he couldn't help but show a sliver of shock. Even a Saint King like him would be gaping with shock at this scene. "This boy, is Ling Han?" he asked. In reply to Senior, "Precisely," the Star Sand Saint replied respectfully, his heart also slightly depressed. At first, he was the strongest elite in a few hundred galaxies, and even when many saints saw him, they would have to respectfully address him as Senior. But now, he had become a junior as the visitor was a Saint King. The Blue Feather Saint King was silent for a moment, and then said, "It is rumored that a few people of the 8 Stones Forbidden Land all died here?" "Yes," the Star Sand Saint said concisely yet comprehensively, though his heart shook. The news of the previous battle had finally spread to the various forbidden lands. "Tell me the details of the battle," the Blue Feather Saint King commanded. The Star Sand Saint related the battle from the beginning to end, and did not add the slightest bit, nor did he detract from it the slightest. He merely described the battle from his point of view. Furthermore, he even withdrew his own memories to reconstruct the situation at that time. Seeing two Saint Kings working together to attack Ling Han, yet instead ending up killed by Ling Han in 3 moves, the Blue Feather Saint King couldn't help a drastic change in his expression. Before this, though he had already confirmed the news of 2 Saint Kings dying in battle, he still had some doubt, and thought it was possible that some powerful forbidden lands had made their move, and used Ling Han's name to kill the 2 Saint Kings. But now he could confirm that his previous guess had been wrong. This young man was awfully powerful. Behind him, the 3 young people also showed expressions of shock. They really couldn't believe it. A man whose cultivation level was even lower than theirs actually managed to slaughter saints, and the person slaughtered was even a Saint King, and furthermore, it was not just one. The Blue Feather Saint King withdrew his expression of astonishment. He already decided to maintain good relations with Ling Han, and smilingly said, "Merely his enduring a heavenly tribulation is so shocking, no wonder he possesses such enigmatic methods." He did not speak any further, obviously wanting to wait until Ling Han finished enduring the heavenly tribulation to converse with him. The Star Sand Saint did not dare to take the initiative to speak up, and neither could he leave. He could only stand on one side, his heart even more suppressed. By now, he was close to becoming a specialist escort, and it could be expected that the Blue Feather Saint King was only the first. There would be more Star Sand Saints arriving. Half a day later, Ling Han had completed enduring the heavenly tribulation, and by channeling a drop of indestructible true fluid, his body was instantly reformed, completely unscathed. This naturally brought another surprise to the Blue Feather Saint King and the others. "Young friend." The Blue Feather Saint King beckoned Ling Han over, all smiles. Ling Han descended, and greeted with clasped hands, "Greetings, Senior." The Blue Feather Saint King paused slightly, and then continued, "Young friend, your military successes are formidable, managing to even slaughter Saint Kings. I do not dare to put on the airs of a senior in front of you. If you are angered, and kill me as well, what am I to do?" When he said the last words, he was smiling. Naturally, he was deliberately joking with Ling Han. "You can just call me Big Brother," he said. The 3 juniors from the White Rainbow Forbidden Land all froze. In their hearts, the Grand Elder had always been solemn and austere, and he was absolute authority. Yet now, they actually saw him joking around, making them feel as if their perceptions of the world were about to crumble. Furthermore, "Big Brother?" Gasp. Ling Han also grinned, and answered, "Then I will humbly oblige." He had killed Saint Kings, and furthermore, it was not just one, so if he continued to put on the act of a junior, it would instead cause the saint to feel uneasy. Though he was now only in the Eternal River tier, what if he suddenly flew into a rage, and again became powerful? Ling Han conversed with the Blue Feather Saint King for a very long time, mainly about the matter of merging the 2 realms. The White Rainbow Forbidden Land had not joined the Heaven-Crushing Alliance, but it did not hinder them from being strong, nor did it hinder them from knowing how to open the doors to the Celestial Realm. Before this, everything was mere fantasy. They naturally had no interest in joining the Heaven-Crushing Alliance, but now that Ling Han had appeared, especially when he had even killed Saint Kings, the White Rainbow Forbidden Land naturally set their hearts on him. They were determined to board this ship, and even if the merging of the 2 realms ultimately failed, they would be able to enter into the Celestial Realm via Ling Han's help. Thus, this time, it was the Blue Feather Saint King himself who appeared personally. Chapter 16:10, Gathering of Saints. Finally, the White Rainbow Forbidden Land formed an alliance with Ling Han. If one of them was in trouble, the other would provide assistance. This was an expression of goodwill from the Blue Feather Saint King to Ling Han. Otherwise, did the White Rainbow Forbidden Land have to worry about others using force on them? The people from the White Rainbow Forbidden Land had not left and a new Forbidden Land had arrived. It was the Extreme Forbidden Land, and they were similarly led by a Saint King, who had 4 juniors with him. Since he was bringing juniors with him, he naturally was not hostile. Then, there were several other Forbidden Lands arriving, and all of a sudden, Wood Figure Planet suddenly had many saints. Their numbers were close to exceeding the number of Eternal River Tears. It was practically enough to make one wonder if it was the Eternal River Tear that was harder to reach than the Genesis Tear. After the saints from the Forbidden Lands saw the memories and image of the battle between Ling Han and Hu Luo and another Saint King, they were all very polite to Ling Han. In front of these supreme elites, whatever age, background, and aptitude were no more than empty words. Genuine strength was the only thing that they would take seriously. Ling Han was qualified to be their equal in their relations. The atmosphere on Wood Figure Planet also became very peaceful because of this. The saints all made an agreement of alliance with Ling Han, and there were even a great many Forbidden Lands that were even more decisive, wanting to form a connection with Ling Han through marriage. In their eyes, only this kind of alliance was the most dependable. Yet Ling Han shook his head. Seriously, forming a connection with him through marriage was no joke. What if it drew out that little jealous lover of his? They all would be razed instantly. A great many Forbidden Lands naturally gave out many gifts, which were considerably valuable, but there was no saint-grade godly metal that Ling Han wanted. It was too precious. There might not be that many pieces even in the whole Forbidden Land. It was absolutely impossible such an exorbitantly valuable gift would be given upon the first meeting. If they were unwilling to give it, then he would just have to buy from them. Taking advantage of the fact that so many saints were present, Ling Han decisively conducted a treasure exchange. They naturally would be giving him some face at present. All the Forbidden Lands participated. However, it was not every Forbidden Land that had a Saint King. There would also be weaker and stronger Forbidden Lands. Thus, if they did not have a Saint King, they would send out a great saint, and if they didn't even have a great saint, then a medium saint would come, and if they still did not have a medium saint, that was impossible. Those that could become Forbidden Lands would at least have a medium saint in their ranks. Ling Han drew out the reincarnation tree leaves, and steeped a cup of tea in front of them, and had every saint take a small sip. Suddenly, all the saints were excited. This could allow them to comprehend Tao. This was too awesome. A precious treasure. This was natural. Not just them, even if this was in the celestial realm, the celestial kings could also comprehend the regulations of heaven and earth through the reincarnation tree leaves. Of course, Ling Han's reincarnation tree leaves were too unorthodox as they had been produced through an accelerated process. They definitely would have no effect on celestial kings, and their effects on even ascending origin tiers and immortal palace tiers would also be very light. But for dividing soul tiers and severing mundane tiers, this could still be called a supreme celestial treasure. Then to these saints, how could this not be awesome enough? Ling Han used these tea leaves to trade for saint-grade godly metal to continue increasing the grade of the divine demon sword. Previously, though he had obtained all the belongings of over 100 demon masters, saintly material in their possession was very limited, and there was not enough to increase the divine demon sword's grade by another level at all. The saints all took out their saint-grade godly metal to trade, but for Ling Han, this was only an utterly inadequate measure. Many little drops made an ocean. Ling Han made a promise with the saints. This kind of exchange would be effective in the long term. Though some saints were envious, and had the urge to rob him, they then thought of the memory image depicting how Ling Han had practically killed 2 saint kings in an instant that they had seen previously, as well as remembered the news that had also spread from the side of the netherworld, where Ling Han had slaughtered over 100 demon masters in a single battle, and there were even more than 20 heaven demons among them. When this news spread out, those saint kings became even more polite to Ling Han, and the attitudes of the great saints and medium saints could practically be called humble. See, his trump card could be used again and again, so who knew how many more times he could show his might? As long as there was another time, the saint kings here would probably be enough for Ling Han to make another massacre. Strength was naturally produced through battle. Were over 100 demon masters and 2 saint kings still not enough for Ling Han to establish his might? Even in the hearts of the various forbidden lands, Ling Han was also the equivalent of a demon god. Now, aside from some extremely remote and closed-off forbidden lands, it could be claimed that Ling Han's name was known throughout the world, and he could completely continue just by depending on his face. Another few months later, the grand elders of the various forbidden lands all left, but a considerable number of the younger generation stayed behind, wanting to further their amiable relations with Ling Han. There were even a great many that were exquisite beauties who could match divine fairies in their looks, and their goals were considerably impure. Ling Han completely ignored them. After breaking through to the consummate level, he first newly inscribed the limitless 9 deaths formations on his godly bones. The number had soared up from 27 all the way to 99, which made even the tranquil heart saint dumbfounded. However, even 99 killing formations could not possibly match a small saint. Genesis tier was too hard to break into, and once they became a saint tier, their abilities naturally would be earth-shatteringly powerful. Next, Ling Han continued to work hard on cultivation. Now, he had enough alchemical pills to allow him to rush up to the peak stage of the consummate level. Since that was the case, he naturally had no need to do something like go on exploration trips in some ancient sites. He only had to work hard on cultivation underneath the reincarnation tree. Time passed quietly, and there was absolutely no movement from the 8 stones forbidden land at all. Even their 2 saint kings had died, so they did not even dare talk about the matter of vengeance. It was already a stroke of luck for them that Ling Han did not seek them out to make trouble, and they obediently lowered their heads and behaved. In the blink of an eye, another 3 years had already passed. The Empress had already formed 9,999,999 stars, and was only a single star away from the end of the pinnacle level of the Eternal River tier, but at this time, even if the Empress was a supreme divine fetus, she also reached a bottleneck. She could not make that final step. She began a deep seclusion beneath the reincarnation tree, determined that she would not stop unless she had taken that last step. After the heavenly phoenix divine maiden returned to the immortal realm, her cultivation level spiked as if she had a cheat code. The inheritance of the 3 true Phoenix Saint Kings was fully boosting her, and added with the help of alchemical pills and the reincarnation tree, she had already soared to the consummate level of the Eternal River tier, and was beginning to attempt breaking through to the Saint tier. She did not even think of wanting to cultivate the pinnacle level of the Eternal River tier. Ding Ping, Jiuyao, and the others also reached the low extreme of the Eternal River tier. The Rain Emperor was even more impressive as he had advanced into the high extreme of the Eternal River tier, and furthermore, he had merged the regulations of the 2 realms on the high extreme level. Luck is not too bad. Though I did not get much Saint-grade godly metal, I unexpectedly obtained high Crimson Blood and Purple Valley godly metal, and together with the heavenly phoenix feather I got long ago, I am now only missing the true dragon horn. And, when I have reached the pinnacle level of the Eternal River tier, I will seek out Long Xiangyue and make a trip to the Long tribe, and get the true dragon horn to fulfill my agreement with the heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire. However, this time, I don't have Hu Niu with me anymore. Wouldn't it be terrible if I were lost in the darkness? Hence, I will have to go only after I reach the pinnacle level of the Eternal River tier. It would be safer. In these 3 years, Ling Han also reached the peak stage of the consummate level of the Eternal River tier, and had to work hard to take that last step into the next level. He ingested pills every day, and continued his accumulation. He also comprehended Tao beneath the reincarnation tree every day to bring up his comprehension of cultivation level. Once he broke through, he would be able to soar to the skies. 2 months later, he rushed out of the Black Tower, and entered into the galaxy. Suddenly, dark clouds rolled out, and thunder boomed. The heavenly tribulation was here. Chapter 1611, Long Tribe. The greatest benefit of breaking through to the pinnacle level for Ling Han was that his godly bones would advance to Saint grade. He inscribed a total of 999 limitless 9 deaths formations on his godly bones in one go. In truth, he very much wanted to inscribe Saint grade killing formations. Unfortunately, without advancing into the saint tier himself, even if his godly bones could support them, it would be useless. They would only be an empty frame, and could not be activated at all. However, a quantitative change could form a qualitative change. 999 Limitless 9 Deaths Formations. Just what kind of concept was that? It was definitely not just 999 cultivators at the consummate level of the Eternal River tier combining forces, merging together to attack. The boost of power would be 10 times to 100 times that. Ling Han felt an itch in his heart. He sought out the Tranquil Heart Saint, and the two of them engaged in a spar. The result was astonishing. Ling Han actually suppressed the Tranquil Heart Saint. They both depended on formations, but the might of the simultaneous activation of 999 Limitless 9 Deaths formations was actually stronger than even a saint formation. Of course, if Ling Han could inscribe 10 saint-grade killing formations inside his body now, that would definitely be even more amazing. It was only now that Ling Han truly possessed the ability to kill a saint with his own battle prowess. The issue was that just what saint would clearly know that he was no match for Ling Han, and still be determined to battle him to the death. After all, his strength was not equipped with an overwhelming advantage. When a saint sensed something was off as the battle continued, how could it be that they would not flee? Aside from killing formations, whether it was the banishing technique, darkness of the paramount night, flying dragon's shadow hands, or other such celestial techniques, they all had no effect on saints, but the 9 heavens flame, divine demon sword, and the broken wooden sword were still very frightening. Even saint kings would dare not be touched or struck by these attacks. Ling Han finally felt it was about enough, and went to seek out Long Xianyue. "Take me to see your aunt," he said directly. Long Xianyue's expression was filled with resentment. This fickle guy, being surrounded by the exquisite beauties of the Forbidden Lands every day, was now having designs on her aunt. Was he planning to have both aunt and niece? He was really too shameless. She was thinking this in her heart, yet her head involuntarily nodded, and she replied, "All right." When the words left her mouth, she almost slapped herself. She actually agreed to such a preposterous request. When she thought that she and her aunt would be lying on the same bed, and this guy would show a perverted expression, suddenly pouncing on them, her face flushed as red as blood, yet she looked a bit dazed as well. Ling Han was a little baffled. When had this fierce woman become such a love-struck fool? He grabbed Long Xianyue and stuffed her into the cloud-piercing shuttle. It rose into the air, and entered into the galaxy. Why do you not use the means of saints, and directly travel through space? Long Xianyue asked Ling Han in confusion, coming back to her senses after a very long time. Fuck. Ling Han was mocking in his heart. If he could, he naturally wanted to. Spreading out a golden path, just how eye-catching was that? But how could the present him have that ability? Putting aside the fact that he could no longer use a power boost from the Black Tower, even if he could, and merely used it to travel quickly, the exorbitance of doing something like that was something that even he would not be able to forgive himself for. Women, what mysterious beings. When Long Xianyue saw that Ling Han did not answer her, she used her own understanding. Now that both of us are aboard the shuttle, wouldn't it be a rare journey where it is just the two of us? Does he want to have more time alone with me? With this thought, she couldn't help but become more infatuated. If he wants to do that to me, should I allow it or not? If I allow it, would it seem as if I were too unreserved? If I don't, what if it angers him, and he ignores me in future? Then I will just half allow it and half refuse. In any case, I am not as strong as him, so after slight resistance, I will just allow him to do what he wills. When she thought about the embarrassing parts, her face couldn't help but blush, her heart beating madly. Unfortunately, what she was both afraid and expectant of did not happen. Ling Han sat firmly as if he was made of stone, and did not even say much. After about 4 months later, the cloud-piercing shuttle entered into the strong sun galaxy, and very soon arrived at Gathered Sea's planet. The Long tribe resided on Gathered Sea's planet. In the strong sun galaxy, the Long tribe was the undisputed strongest force. The leader of the Long tribe was a medium saint, and Long Xianyue's auntie had also become a saint herself thousands of years ago. Having two saints in the same tribe was extremely shocking. This auntie of Long Xianyue was named Long Yushan, and had been known for her beauty and natural talent ever since childhood. However, after she became a saint, not many people dared to have improper designs on her. Without being saints themselves, how could they possibly think of wanting to seize this princess of the heavens? The cloud-piercing shuttle landed. Because the landing position could not be accurately controlled, there was still a very, very long distance to travel before reaching the ancestral grounds of the Long tribe. Thankfully, for two eternal river tiers, this was only a matter of 3 to 4 days. Long Xianyue was a bit gloomy. Could it be that his guy was a blockhead? They had shared a few months of time alone, and his gaze actually did not slant at all. Was he putting on a pretense of being serious, or was it that she was not enchanting enough? As her thoughts ran wild, 3 days passed in the blink of an eye. They had already arrived at the ancestral grounds of the Long tribe. Ninth young miss. When they saw Long Xianyue walk over with an unfamiliar man, the 4 guards at the entrance were first startled, and then continued to gasp, immediately calling out to her respectfully. Long Xianyue was also the pride of the Long tribe. In future, there was a chance for her to become the 3rd saint of the Long Xianyue, and by then, they would have a total of 3 saints in their tribe, which would mean glory for all ages. Long Xianyue nodded, and brought Ling Han in. Ninth young miss would actually bring a man back with her. How rare, with how proud and arrogant 9th young miss is, there has never been a man that was able to walk by her side in the past. The gaze that 9th young miss directed at that person is also full of tender feelings. Could it be that this is our future young master? Oh no, we have not greeted him properly just now. Those 4 guards immediately began discussing in whispers at the side. However, though their voices were very low, how could they escape the ears of Ling Han and Long Xianyue? Long Xianyue was both embarrassed and glad, and said, "These people really know how to chatter nonsense, just see how I will deal with them later." Ling Han only snickered, and Long Xianyue couldn't help but pout. Now that she was home, Long Xianyue became energetic, scrambling here and there in the courtyard, a genuine smile on her face, which made Ling Han feel rueful. This was the real behavior that a young girl should have. She dragged Ling Han with her directly to the residence of Long Yushan. That was a serene and elegant little courtyard. In truth, Long Yushan very rarely stayed here. She frequently traveled all over in pursuit of a breakthrough so she could advance further in her cultivation. But when the 2 of them arrived at the entrance to the courtyard, they unexpectedly discovered that there was a young man and woman standing there. Both of them were of graceful bearing, as if they were giants among men, and were both in the eternal river tier. Halt! Seeing Ling Han and Long Xianyue approach, the young man stretched out his hand to stop their advance. Who are the 2 of you? Long Xianyue couldn't help but be irritated. She did not recognize these 2 people, but was absolutely sure that they were not members of the Long tribe. Otherwise, how could she possibly be unaware that 2 young prodigies that had broken through to the eternal river tier had appeared in the tribe? I should be the one asking this question. Who are you 2? She released her aura, already preparing for a battle. The young man smiled slightly. I am Yang Zaij. May I know how I should address you, miss? Long Xianyue. This princess of the Long Xianyue looked towards that young woman. Jing Yi, the woman answered. What do you mean by standing guard at the entrance to my auntie's residence? Long Xianyue directly questioned. That was what her personality was like. Chapter 1612, Open Clouds, Forbidden Land. Jing Yi smiled. Miss Long, at present, Lady Yushan is with our young master, so it would be best that you 2 do not disturb them for now. And who is your young master? Long Xianyue's brows wrinkled in a frown. Open Clouds, Forbidden Land, Zhong Badu. Jing Yi and Yang Zaij announced simultaneously, their tone filled with respect as if a supreme god was standing in front of them. Ling Han was startled. The Open Clouds Forbidden Land? Open Clouds King? All those years ago, the Heavenly River King had been betrayed by the Open Clouds King, so he faced enemies both in front and behind him. Otherwise, with how he had cultivated a Celestial King technique, it was very possible that he would be able to open the doors to the Celestial Realm. This also filled the Heavenly River King with great resentment, and he strongly requested his heir to kill the Open Clouds King in his will. So this Open Clouds King established the Open Clouds Forbidden Land after that? Never heard of it. Long Xiangyue raised a brow. Out of the way, I want to see my auntie. Apologies, Miss Long. Jing Yi smiled apologetically, but showed no intention to move out of the way and let them pass. Long Xiangyue was angered. This was the Long tribe, and two outsiders like you actually dared to stand in her way. Was there any more law in this place? With a chung, she drew her sword, her expression dark, and she was already filled with killing intent. She was just about to move when her shoulder suddenly felt a weight. No matter how much she tried, she could not take another step. She turned to look, and saw that one of Ling Han's hands was pressing down on her shoulder. You are no match for them, Ling Han said. Though Long Xiangyue's rate of advancement could not be considered slow, she presently was only at the peak stage of the low extreme of the Eternal River tier, while Jing Yi and Yang Zaij were in the pinnacle level of the Eternal River tier. He is worrying about me. Long Xiangyue couldn't help but feel a sweetness in her heart, all her fury suddenly dissipating into thin air. Ling Han withdrew his hand, and said to Jing Yi and Yang Zaij, those who are guests should behave like guests. It is not proper for the guest to overwhelm the host. Who are you? These two people looked at Ling Han, a sliver of seriousness in their expressions. Similarly in the Eternal River tier, they naturally realized how strong Ling Han was, and treated him seriously and cautiously. Ling Han. Ling Han? Their expressions were filled with confusion, obviously not having heard of Ling Han's name. But since his surname was Ling, it meant that he was not related to the Long tribe, causing the two of them to dispense with their wariness. Ho ho, so you are only a guest. What right do you have to fault us? Yang Zaij asked calmly. It is true that I don't. However, if I wish to enter, what right do you two have to stop me? Ling Han pointed at the main doors. Do you have that strength? Jing Yi's fighting spirit blazed. Every king tier was definitely battle-thirsty. Otherwise, without experiencing multiple battles, how could they possibly reach that kind of height? Ling Han did not say a word, and only took a step forwards. Sensing the movement in the air, Jing Yi and Yang Zaij also took a step forwards at the same time, both of them raising their hands, and planning to make a move. But in the next moment, they were shocked because they had not even made their move, and Ling Han's palms were already pressing down on their respective shoulders. It was as if their senses had experienced a momentary lapse, and after a dazed moment, the situation had come to this. If Ling Han had not placed his hands on their shoulders, but rather on their heads, the two of them couldn't help but break out in a cold sweat. Then Ling Han would only have to exert strength, and he would be able to directly shatter their spirit. No matter how prodigious they were, so what? Their only result was death. Ling Han patted their shoulders, and said, behave and stand aside. He withdrew his hands, and Jing Yi and Yang Zaij hurriedly dodged to either side. They were so shocked that their hearts were throbbing violently. It was clear that they were all in the pinnacle level of the Eternal River tier, so why was the gap between them so wide? It was as if they would not be able to last one single move from Ling Han. Young Master has commanded us, no one is to disturb them. Yang Zaij forced out through clenched teeth, and drew his weapon. It was a battle dagger axe. Divine patterns glowed one after another, boosting his aura to an incredibly strong level. Jing Yi did the same. She used a pair of blades, and the aura that he exuded was not the slightest bit inferior to Yang Zaij. Ling Han smiled carelessly, and said, seeing as the two of you are only obeying orders, I will be more merciful. Jing Yi and Yang Zaij both exclaimed lightly, and charged in attack, wielding their respective weapons. Wang, divine patterns glowed, their aggression spreading out like an ocean. Long Xiangyue's pretty face couldn't help but pale. Though she was conceited, she definitely did not think she would be able to match this kind of battle prowess. Putting aside the question of emerging victorious, it was a question whether or not she would be able to even parry a single attack. However, she was filled with confidence in Ling Han. He was a man who had even killed 2 Saint Kings, so what were mere eternal river tears worth? Ling Han very casually waved his hand, and banished their 2 attacks. He easily arrived in front of Yang Zige, and shot out a punch. Ah! Yang Zige suddenly shouted, and stumbled backwards, his nose bleeding wildly. Ling Han turned around, and looked towards Jing Yi. Jing Yi couldn't help but take a step back. The gap between the two of them was too wide, she would not be a match for him even if she put her life on the line. Humph! At this moment, a stern voice rang out from within the courtyard, and the doors to the courtyard opened on their own. A young man was standing afar within the courtyard. It was as if his whole person was the center of the heaven and earth, and others could only worship him. Young master. Both Jing Yi and Yang Zige hurriedly knelt, and paid their greetings to this young man. The young man raised his hand slightly, allowing Jing Yi and Yang Zige to stand. Only then did he turn his eyes to Ling Han and Long Xiangyue. His gaze did not linger for long on Ling Han. Instead, he stared at Long Xiangyue for a long time, a strange smile involuntarily appearing on his lips. Auntie! Long Xiangyue suddenly called out. A woman appeared in the courtyard, and she looked to be in her 20s. Black locks cascaded down her shoulders, while there were 2 small dragon horns growing on her head. Needless to say, this woman was Long Yushan. What impressive courage, to actually dare wound my subordinates. Zhong Badu exclaimed coldly, finally fixing his eyes on Ling Han directly. Ho ho, are you dissatisfied? Ling Han asked calmly. Zhong Badu's eyes narrowed, he was a saint. A mere eternal river tear actually dared be insolent in front of him, what justice was there left in his world? He definitely could not be considered a good-tempered person. Furthermore, what need was there for a saint to have reservations in doing things? Immediately, he stretched out his hand to press down on Ling Han. Pa! His hand had not even landed when Long Yushan swiftly moved. An intimidating dragon's might spread out, and this attack from him was forcefully blocked. Don't move. Long Yushan declared in displeasure. Zhong Badu's expression shifted slightly, but he immediately smiled, and said, Fine, just for the sake of Yushan, I will spare this person just once. With a flutter of his sleeve, he left proudly, and Jing Yi and Yang Zige hurriedly followed behind him. Auntie, who is this guy, so arrogant? Long Xiangyue hurriedly ran to Long Yushan's side, pulling on her hand, and began to act like a spoiled child. Long Yushan cast a doting look on her, and evenly answered, He is my fiancé. Pooh! Long Xiangyue abruptly spluttered. What? She hurriedly shook her head, Auntie, that guy looks to have a repulsive countenance. You definitely cannot marry him, or you will definitely suffer in future. Silly girl, you don't understand. Long Yushan shook her head. Actually, she did not want to marry, but the open clouds forbidden land was too strong. They had a Saint King in their ranks. A few years ago, when the open clouds forbidden land came to ask for marriage, it was a great saint that had come, and he had also brought a betrothal gift that the Long tribe could not afford to refuse. A saintly medicine. Though the Long tribe was powerful for this moment, no one knew that the Grand Elder of the Long tribe had actually always had internal injury. That was a Dao injury that had been left behind when he had forcefully broken through many years ago, and could only be healed by saintly medicine. Chapter 1613, So It's a Misunderstanding. A great saint personally arrived, bringing with him the saintly medicine that the Long tribe urgently needed as a bridal gift. How could the Long tribe afford to refuse this offer of marriage? Moreover, it was actually not a loss to the Long tribe. Zhong Badu was a newly advanced saint, and his aptitude was amazing. In the future, it was very possible that he would be able to become a great saint or even a saint king, and was there any better prospective husband for a woman than this? Long Yushan did not wish to speak much on this matter, and asked Long Xianyue, "That's right, why have you suddenly returned?" Long Xianyue's pretty face involuntarily blushed. Bringing her lover back with her to seek marriage from her auntie? This was a little chaotic, and she could not bring herself to say the words. Yet Ling Han clasped his hands in greeting and said, "Senior Long, I am Ling Han, and I wish to ask for a dragon horn from Senior." Long Yushan's pretty face abruptly darkened. "This is only our first meeting, and you are already having designs on me?" Even a saint like Zhong Badu did not satisfy her, what more a Ling Han who was only in the eternal river tier. "Senior, take a look at this first." Ling Han brought out a cup of reincarnation tea, and handed it over to Long Yushan. Long Yushan's first reaction was to overturn this cup, yet her hand had just lifted when she suddenly paused. The aroma of the tea was refreshing to both heart and spirit, making her feel like her spirit had been steadied, as if she was fitting in with the great Tao, and filled her with an amazing enlightenment. Her heart involuntarily throbbed strongly. Was this saintly medicine? After a momentary pause, she automatically took the teacup, and finished the tea in a single gulp. Suddenly, there were patterns of great Tao appearing all over her body, and her raven locks fluttered. A divine multicolored light shone from her, making her look extremely beautiful and alluring. She immediately sat down in a cross-legged position, and only after a whole day did she finally reopen her eyes. She couldn't help but look pleasantly surprised. Her cultivation level had actually advanced a short distance forwards. It should be known that when one had reached a height like she had, every further step forwards was extremely difficult, and the time needed would be numbered in millions of years. Yet now, with the help from a single cup of tea, she had taken another step forwards. Just how amazing was that? If she could obtain more tea leaves, and drink this kind of tea every day, what would happen then? She couldn't help but look towards Ling Han, seeing him in a new light. 10 tea leaves in exchange for a single dragon horn, deal? Ling Han quoted a price. Long Yushan's pretty face darkened again. "You, a mere eternal river tier, actually treated yourself like some important figure, and planned to use a mere 10 tea leaves to trade for the rest of her life?" Furthermore, this was not a question of the volume of the bridal gift. She already had a betrothal with Zhong Badu, so how could she go back on her word? Even if she was willing to, having screwed a saint king over, what kind of fate would befall the Long tribe? "Humph, if it was not because of Xianyue, I would definitely kill you." With a flutter of her sleeve, she commanded, "Leave." Ling Han was baffled. "If you are not happy with the price, we can just negotiate, right? Why do you have to give me this attitude? Where have I offended you?" He was about to say something more, yet Long Xianyue kept signaling him with her eyes, and he closed his mouth. "Let's go." Long Xianyue pulled Ling Han with her and left. "Auntie is presently angry." "Don't be anxious, I will work slowly on Auntie, and will definitely persuade her to change her mind." Ling Han scratched his head, and said, "That's right, your grand elder should also have dragon horns. Why don't I just trade with him then?" Long Xianyue got such a shock that she delicately shuddered. The grand elder of the Long tribe was a male. Just what kind of person are you? Not only do you want to have an aunt and niece, you do not even want to spare men? This was practically a beast. Ling Han was even more dumbfounded, and asked, "Is there some kind of misunderstanding here? I only want a single dragon horn. I need it for something, and mean nothing else by it." "Ah!" Long Xianyue gasped. "You really have no other intention besides that? What have you all misunderstood?" Ling Han asked. Long Xianyue breathed a sigh of relief internally, yet was also slightly disappointed. Going by that logic, when Ling Han had asked her for a dragon horn previously, it was not because he liked her. Suddenly, her emotions took a downturn, and she ignored Ling Han. She walked ahead on her own. Hey, hey, hey. Ling Han hurriedly caught up to her. After he repeatedly asked her, Long Xiangyue finally informed him about the significance of the dragon horns to the dragon tribe. Ling Han's expression involuntarily became strange. No wonder this girl had previously been so fierce. Hold on, but her attitude had obviously changed later on, and she even brought him to see her auntie. You, don't misunderstand, I, too, only want to help you borrow a dragon horn from auntie. I have absolutely no other intention. Long Xiangyue hurriedly explained. Since Ling Han had previously had completely no idea about the significance of the dragon horn, it made her seem as if she had weird tastes, to actually be so shameless to sell off herself together with her auntie to him. Ling Han nodded. It was better not to deliberate too deeply on this topic. Long Xiangyue first brought Ling Han to settle down first, and she then went off to clarify things with Long Yushan. Ling Han really and purely only wanted to borrow a single dragon horn, and had no other intention. Ling Han rested in his room. He decided to see if Long Xiangyue would be able to succeed first. If she did not, then even if he had to resort to trickery and deceit, he would have to get himself a dragon horn, and then head to the Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire to trade for a celestial technique. Was the Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire someone who had experienced the great turmoil of the celestial realm? He should not be. The era of the great turmoil of the celestial realm had been much too long ago, and even if a celestial king entered into the ancient realm, his lifespan would also be severed, and he might not live that much longer than a Genesis tier. Forget it. He'd ask him when he saw him. He was sure that he could find out more secrets from the Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire. Pang, pang, pang. Not too long after, a knock rang out from the courtyard doors. Ling Han controlled his origin power to open the doors from afar, and saw that there was a man and woman standing at the doorway, Yang Zige and Jing Yi. My young master seeks your presence. Jing Yi stated coldly. Ling Han's first reaction was that he couldn't be bothered. If he wanted to meet him, didn't he know the way here? What great airs he was putting on. However, he thought the matter over, and changed his mind. He had to clarify the relation between the Open Cloud's Forbidden Land and the Open Cloud's King. Thus, he nodded, and answered, lead the way. Jing Yi and Yang Zige both showed expressions of indifference. As they thought if a saint summoned him, did Ling Han dare to refuse? The two of them led the way, and brought Ling Han to another courtyard, which was actually very near. After Ling Han had entered, they closed the doors behind him, and stood guard loyally outside. Zhong Badu was presently sitting in a pavilion in the courtyard and sipping tea, appearing to be very relaxed. If you don't want to die, scram immediately, and never return. Zhong Badu had his back facing Ling Han, and directly issued a command. In his eyes, when a saint spoke, it was natural that all common people could only obey strictly. Ling Han couldn't help but smile, and asked, does your Open Cloud's Forbidden Land have an Open Cloud's King? Insolence, how dare you directly speak the name of our Grand Elder? Zhong Badu stood up in rage, his finger pointing at Ling Han, and his expression baleful. As expected. Ling Han nodded. He had not thought that he would meet a descendant of the Open Cloud's King at this time and in this kind of situation. He smiled faintly, and said, if I have the chance, I will pay a visit to the Open Cloud's Forbidden Land. Who do you think you are? Zhong Badu couldn't help but smirk coldly. Did he really think that he was some kind of important figure? Saying something like paying a visit if he had the chance. He was merely an ant of the eternal river tier. Since you are unwilling to listen to wise advice, you are courting death. He humphed coldly, and tapped out a finger at Ling Han. Xiao, a shadowy point of light surged out, and sank towards Ling Han's forehead. Chapter 1614, Exchange Condition. Ling Han similarly flicked a finger, and a flash of sword light surged out. Zhong Badu's attack was suddenly erased. Zhong Badu couldn't help but look surprised. Though he had only struck casually, the power of a saint was the strongest in this world. How could it be that he wouldn't be able to kill a mere eternal river tear? Yet the truth was as bizarre as that. Ling Han actually dissipated a strike from him. How is this possible? Interesting. Zhong Badu stated coldly. Though he was extremely shocked, a saint naturally had the bearing of a saint, and he did not panic in the slightest. It would not be polite just to receive and not give, so you should take a strike from me as well. Ling Han struck out at Zhong Badu, using his fingers like he would a sword. Zhong Badu swiped out his palm in front of him to block this strike, and pang, the two of them had again exchanged blows. They did not make another move, and merely looked at each other. Through this exchange, Zhong Badu could confirm that Ling Han had battle prowess on the level of a saint. This caused him great confusion because no matter how freakish you were, without reaching the level of mastery over the regulations, however strong your power was, it would only be empty. Yet possessing battle prowess of a saint, and having power that was a match for his were completely two different matters. Zhong Badu had complete confidence that Ling Han could not possibly be a match for him, but he was definitely not an opponent that he could suppress in a few moves either. If they really battled all out, the whole Long tribe might possibly be completely destroyed. Though he was arrogant, he was not so conceited that he would dare be so rash in the residence of a medium saint. Thus, he did not make another move. Truly interesting. He switched to another line. I am extremely curious. You are clearly only in the Eternal River tier, yet how could you possess such strong power? Ling Han answered, where is the open clouds forbidden land? I will come pay a visit when I have the time. Have you consumed some natural treasures? Zhong Badu asked further. I don't like how you look, so I plan to ruin this betrothal for you, Ling Han retorted. Neither of them were answering each other's questions. This was completely meaningless. Zhong Badu paused darkly, and said, there must be an extremely big secret that you're concealing. I will find out all of it. Ling Han broke into a grin. If you're not scared of death, bring it on. Just see how I will kill you. Ha, ha 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 ha. Zhong Badu laughed loudly. I have never seen any Eternal River tier like you. You truly are qualified to be arrogant. For the sake of this place being the Long tribe, I will allow you to continue with your arrogance for a while longer. You too, you too. Ling Han turned and left. Since he already knew that this Open Clouds Forbidden Land was the lair of the Open Clouds King, he knew where he should go to find the Open Clouds King in future. Zhong Badu looked at Ling Han's back, his eyes narrowing slightly, and leaking out killing intent. Yet, he ultimately did not make a move. Just as he had said, this place was the Long tribe. He was not sure that he could apprehend Ling Han without causing damage to the Long tribe. Ling Han walked out the doors, and both Jing Yi and Yang Zige showed expressions of pride. They did not know what had happened inside the courtyard, but according to their assumption, since the young master had made a move, Ling Han naturally could only obey. Scram further away, and don't come back and be an irksome presence. Yang Zige moped. He had suffered a punch from Ling Han, so he naturally hated Ling Han very much. Pung! Ling Han casually threw out a punch, which landed on Yang Zige's face. He had put so much force in the strike that the latter was sent flying. Peng! The main doors were crashed open by the impact, and Yang Zige collapsed heavily onto the ground. He rolled around a good few times on the ground, and only stopped when he collided into a stone pillar. He was angered, embarrassed, and shocked. Ling Han actually still dared to attack him? And he again embarrassed himself in front of the young master. This caused his face to be burning red, and he wanted nothing more than to rush up and strangle Ling Han to death. You are dead, he shouted with his head held high as he got to his feet. To actually make a move on him right in front of his young master, didn't one have to see who the master was before beating his dog? Why was there no sign of movement? Yang Zige couldn't help but turn around to look at Zhong Badu. His impression of Zhong Badu was that he was a man who was a strong defender of his own people, no matter whose fault it was. So all the while, it was only he who would be bullying others, and he would definitely not allow others to behave atrociously towards him. Yet now he was actually only glaring at Ling Han. What was going on here? This was a bit awkward. Ling Han smiled slightly, turned around, and walked off. He stretched out a hand and waved before leaving boldly. Young master, he's too arrogant, we can't. Pa. Yang Zij hurriedly complained to Zhong Badu, yet did not expect that Zhong Badu would slap him heavily when he had not even finished speaking. He was completely stunned by this action. Scram. Zhong Badu spat out. He was really an idiot. Could it be that he did not know how to read expressions? Jing Yi meanwhile was shocked. She had never seen Zhong Badu lose his composure to this extent. Just what abilities did that young man have to actually push Zhong Badu to actually vent his anger on his own subordinates? Ling Han returned to his own courtyard, and began thinking, supporting his head with a hand. Since Zhong Badu really was a descendant of the Open Cloud's king, then no matter what, he was determined to ruin this betrothal contract. The question here was, how was he to do that? The Grand Elder of the Long tribe had not gone to Woodfigure Planet, so it was very possible that he had not heard of his name. In that case, his brand name would not be of much use here, and judging from Zhong Badu's behavior, it seemed like the Open Cloud's forbidden land was very remote, and similarly did not know who he was, which led to the fact that his mighty reputation was actually completely useless here. I'll just see how things are progressing on Long Xianyue's side first. Ling Han decided to first sit and wait. After all he could depend on was his glorious military successes as an intimidation factor, and his true abilities were only limited to small saint level. If it was not intimidating enough, then just a medium saint would be enough to deal with him. Not more than 2 days had passed, and Long Yushan suddenly came over. Did you really kill 2 Saint Kings? She asked in disbelief. Ling Han smilingly replied, that's right. You can ask around anywhere you like, and there is nothing exaggerated about it. Long Yushan stared at Ling Han, yet could not believe it however hard she tried to. No matter how she looked, he was only an eternal river tear, but how could Long Xianyue possibly deceive her on this matter? She suddenly made a move, and grabbed out at Ling Han. Ling Han countered casually, and the killing formations inside his body activated, surging out with small saint-level battle prowess. Furthermore, it was the strength of the top level, and he easily blocked this strike from Long Yushan. He did not press his attack, because Long Yushan was only testing his power. Long Yushan was involuntarily stunned. Previously, Ling Han had definitely not used any kind of precious tool, yet the burst of power from him was enough to match her. From this aspect, if he still had any trump card and used it, perhaps killing a Saint King was really not just a fantastical story. She paused, and said, do something for me, and I will give you a dragon horn. Ling Han smiled slightly, and answered, tell me, what is it you want me to do? I want you to think of a way to cancel the betrothal that I have with the Zhong clan, Long Yushan said. This was really interesting. He was intending to ruin this betrothal in the first place, but he had not thought that Long Yushan would actually use this as her condition. This was equivalent to giving him the dragon horn for free. He said, marrying or not, the right to choose is yours. Wouldn't it be fine if you just directly refused? No. Long Yushan shook her head. The Zhong clan has a Saint King. If we directly refuse the betrothal, it would definitely anger the Saint King. The Long tribe would be drowned in calamity. Thus, you have to be the one to do this task. She was meaning to have him become a fool here. Chapter 16:15, Proposing Marriage. Ling Han smiled, and said, since you know that I have the means to overwhelm a Saint King, why do you not fear that I would directly make a move to snatch it from you? In any case, I only want the horn of a true dragon, so what need is there for me to go to so much trouble? If you had been that kind of person, wouldn't have you long since made your move? Long Yushan countered. That may not be. Ling Han shook his head. To release the battle prowess of a Saint King, there is a need to pay a very heavy price. Do you think that this is something that a single horn from a true dragon can compensate for? Long Yushan gritted her teeth, and asked, then what other condition do you want? Ling Han laughed mischievously, and deliberately revealed an evil look. Just as Long Yushan was about to fly into a rage, he shrugged, and said, fine, I agree. In any case, I don't like that guy, either. Long Yushan was startled. Was he playing around with her? But since Ling Han had agreed, that was naturally best. She nodded, and said, you must immediately make a marriage proposal to the clan, and I will add fuel to the fire so that you and Zhong Badu can use a battle to decide the matter. At that time, you can wound him, and I will be able to refuse your marriage proposal with the reason of not wanting to offend the Zhong clan. At the same time, I will not need to obey the Zhong clan either. Your idea is quite good. Ling Han scratched his head. At any other time, offending a forbidden land to trade for a true dragon horn was definitely an extremely poor deal, but who asked Zhong Badu to be the descendant of the Open Clouds King? He despised the Open Clouds King very much in the first place, and Zhong Badu's attitude also made him very displeased. Thus, he naturally would not mind moving to teach a lesson to this descendant of the Open Clouds King first. Deal. He nodded. Here. Long Yushan gripped a dragon horn on her head, and exerted effort. Pa, she snapped off a dragon horn. There was bright ruby-red blood seeping from the wound, but it was incredibly thick, and did not drip on the ground. She tossed the dragon horn over to Ling Han. Ling Han caught it, and couldn't help but be slightly surprised. He asked, aren't you afraid that I will run off now that I have gotten what I wanted? I trust you. After Long Yushan said this, she turned and left. Ling Han stretched lazily. Since that's the case, I will put on a good performance. He exited the courtyard, and had someone pass on the message with his request to meet with the patriarch of the Long tribe. The Long tribe patriarch was not the ancestor of the Long tribe. That medium saint was busy cultivating all day round, so how could he possibly have the time to take charge of the trifle matters of the clan? Thus, the Long tribe patriarch was an elite in the consummate level of the Eternal River tier. He thought that he could not possibly break through to the Genesis tier, so he set his mind on sitting in this position, and no longer dreamed extravagantly of becoming a saint himself. Very quickly, a servant brought the message that the Long tribe patriarch would see him. Ho ho, friend Ling is really young and promising. It is said that you have cultivated for less than 1,000 years, and already possess such strength. This is really something that is impressive and would make others envious. The Long tribe patriarch met with Ling Han in the Great Hall. He was a man that looked to be in his 50s. He looked very formidable and aggressive, and it was as if an ancient fierce beast was hidden inside his body. His battle prowess definitely made him a big shot among Eternal River tiers. Ling Han grinned, and said, you've overpraised me. Lord Patriarch, I will not waste my breath either, and directly state the purpose of my visit. Please. The Long tribe patriarch was still very polite. Though he did not think that Ling Han could be stronger than himself, both of them were in the consummate level of the Eternal River tier, so he still had to give Ling Han some face. Most importantly, Ling Han was too young. Since he had reached the consummate level of the Eternal River tier at such a young age, then breaking through to the Saint tier was not an impossible matter either. He naturally had to give some face to a future saint. Ling Han said, I have come especially to bring a bridal gift. Oh. Realization dawned on the Long tribe patriarch, and he was all smiles. He had long guessed this was the case. Xiang Yue had brought him back with her, so could the significance be any clearer than that? Their Long tribe was also the strongest force in this whole galaxy, and there was no need for them to use marriage to improve and strengthen their position. Thus, as long as Xiang Yue wanted to, he naturally would be pleased to bring a romance to a happy ending. Moreover, the possibility of Ling Han becoming a saint in future was very high. The Long tribe having such a son-in-law was naturally not deprecating to Long Xianyue at all. Sit down first, and let us discuss slowly. He beckoned him over, and his attitude towards Ling Han inevitably became considerably warmer. Ling Han was surprised, and then immediately realized that this Lord Patriarch must have misunderstood. He coughed, and said, "Lord Patriarch, my marriage proposal is not for Miss Long Xianyue." Ah. The Long tribe patriarch was startled. The one he had his eye on was not Long Xianyue? Then that was strange. Aside from Xianyue, what other clansman of the Long tribe was worthy of being a match for a prodigy like him? Then, the person you like is Long Yushan, very Long. Ling Han wore a bashful smile. Fuck, he was lying through his teeth here, and would be struck by lightning for his deceit. This time, the patriarch of the Long tribe was really surprised. He stared blankly at Ling Han, and did not know what he was supposed to say at this moment. "Lord Patriarch?" Ling Han called out. The patriarch of the Long tribe came back to his senses, and answered, "Friend, Lady Yushan has long since been betrothed to another." Ling Han smiled faintly, and said, "That's fine. It is just a betrothal, so canceling it would be all right." At this instant, the patriarch of the Long tribe really wanted to deliver a slap straight to Ling Han's face. Cancel? He was saying it like it was so easy. The fiancé is from the open clouds forbidden land, where there is a saint king overseeing them, and you actually said you want us to cancel it. Are you not afraid of the fiery fury of a saint king? Ho ho, friend, you should not joke around, the Long tribe patriarch said with a forced smile, no longer wanting to converse with Ling Han. The latter was really dumb with his words. "I'm not kidding," Ling Han said smilingly. "Do not speak of this matter again." The Long tribe patriarch gave a resolute rejection. Though he was not qualified to decide the marriage of a saint of the clan, it was obviously impossible that he would offend a saint king for the sake of a preposterous request from an eternal river tier. No matter how he thought about it, it was impossible. "I am very sincere in my request. Lord Patriarch had best reconsider." Ling Han was very shameless. This task he had taken was clearly a job of a villain that would offend others, so he could only put on the act of a villain to the fullest extent. "Friend, please immediately leave the Long tribe," the Long tribe patriarch exclaimed coldly. This was not just forcing them to do something, but also pushing the Long tribe into a fire pit. "Sure, just hand Long Yushan over, and I will leave immediately." Ling Han continued to behave shamelessly. "You!" The Long tribe patriarch jumped to his feet. "Brat, where do you think this is? How could you be allowed to create trouble without reason like this?" Ling Han laughed loudly. "Lord Patriarch, calm down. Calm down." Scram. The Long tribe patriarch could not hold back from making a move. He stretched out a hand to grab at Ling Han, and his palm instantly turned into a crimson dragon's claw. Flames intertwined around his claw, and divine patterns bloomed as dragons might spread out intimidatingly. Ling Han very casually stretched out a hand. "Pa!" He grabbed the extended claw of the Long tribe patriarch. "Lord Patriarch, we can converse politely. There is no need to resort to force." The Long tribe patriarch couldn't help but be shocked. His hand had fallen into Ling Han's grip, yet it actually could not move in the slightest. The gap in power between the two of them was definitely not just a small bit. How is this possible? He was in the consummate level of the Eternal River tier, and the true bloodline of the dragon tribe ran in his veins. His battle prowess would definitely overwhelm his peers, but he actually could not fight back in the slightest against Ling Han. This was something that he could not accept at all. Chapter 16:16, Deciding Through Battle. "Lord Patriarch, have you calmed your emotions a bit? Can we discuss peacefully now?" Ling Han asked smilingly. The Long tribe patriarch's expression was dark. "No wonder you dared to behave so unreasonably," so you are so strong. However, this is the Long tribe, where there are 2 saints watching over, so no matter how strong you are, what would you be able to do? Sigh, you are being unreasonable here. Ling Han said. Look, I am making a proper marriage proposal to your clan, yet you are already declaring violence. Is this the way you treat a guest? The Long tribe patriarch couldn't help but explode with fury. The crux of the matter here is that your request has overstepped the boundaries. Isn't wanting to break the betrothal contract with a Saint King simply putting the Long tribe on the fire? He surged with dragon's might, wanting to start an aggressive counterattack. Ling Han only acted as if he had not seen it. His right hand gripped the other's dragon arm as if it was just a child he was holding. In front of Ling Han, the Long tribe patriarch was really not much different from a child. No matter how intimidating your dragon's might was, and no matter how much your dragon's blood boiled to increase your battle prowess, so what? The Long tribe patriarch struggled with all his might. He was already covered with sweat, yet it was as if Ling Han had fallen asleep. That was how indescribably relaxed he was. This. The Long tribe patriarch was astonished. Just how wide was the power gap between the two of them? Gritting his teeth, he suddenly drew out a divine sword from his spatial spirit tool. The blade of the sword was actually forged from a white bone, and there were multiple divine patterns that were already shining brightly on it. This was the backbone of an ancestor of the Long tribe. Before he had died, he himself had plucked it out, and forged it into a god tool. Saint Tool. When the dragon bone sword was activated. This was the Long tribe, and the Long tribe patriarch had a special boost. Instantly, this allowed this Saint Tool to be activated to the maximum. A crimson true dragon flew out of the sword's blade, pouncing to attack Ling Han. Ling Han's eyes widened slightly. Only now had it become a little more interesting. He stretched out his hand to grab the true dragon, the killing formations inside him activating. Countless formation patterns were densely interwoven with each other, and ultimately became a sword that struck out at that true dragon. A bizarre event occurred. With a sweep of its tail, that true dragon actually sank back into the dragon bone sword. It had been scared into fleeing. The Long tribe patriarch was dumbfounded. The dragon bone sword was actually terrified of Ling Han. The tool spirit of this sword was actually a wisp of spirit from that ancestor, as it had been forged from a bone that he had plucked out himself. However, it had long since lost sentience, and was only left with the instinct to protect the Long tribe. But as long as it had become a tool spirit, it had a basic trait, and that was that it would instinctively protect itself. Only if it was undamaged would it be able to complete its goal of protection. Thus, unless absolutely necessary, this kind of precious tool would definitely not battle to the point of being destroyed. Just exactly how strong were you that you could actually induce fear from a completely activated Saint Tool? Ling Han broke into a smile, and asked, Lord Patriarch, can we now discuss calmly? Discuss, we will discuss. The Long tribe patriarch only felt his head was buzzing, his thoughts in a complete mess. The discussion between the two of them that followed was naturally absolutely meaningless. The Long tribe patriarch didn't even know what he was saying. Ling Han did not mind it either. In any case, he was purely here to make trouble. After talking for a while, Ling Han left boldly, and with Long Yushan's adding fuel to the fire, there was a rumor that spread through the grapevine of the Long tribe. Ling Han robbed Zhong Badu of his prize, and had made a marriage proposal for Long Yushan to the Long tribe, and the generosity of his bridal gift was astonishing. Not too long after, this news had reached the ears of Zhong Badu. Pa! With a palm strike, he had rendered the stone table in front of him into bits. He suddenly stood, his eyes blazing with killing intent. Previously, he had not killed Ling Han completely because he had not wanted to offend the ancestor of the Long tribe, but this brat actually wasn't just satisfied with that, and actually dared to entertain ideas about his woman. This was unacceptable. Young master. Jing Yi and Yang Zaij both took a step forwards. Zhong Badu suppressed his fury, crossing his arms behind his back. This was only a small rumor. The Long tribe would not possibly dare break the betrothal, as that would anger a saint king who would be able to sustain the fury from a saint king in this world. That person was only trying to get attention. There was no need to pay the matter any mind. When he left the Long tribe, he would kill him so that he would know how serious the consequences of angering him were. Yet, the matter was not like how Zhong Badu thought it was not merely the attention-seeking act from an ugly person. It was said that Long Yushan's attitude was very ambiguous, and there was even news that the ancestor of the Grand Elder was going to be asked to come out of seclusion and make a new assessment of this betrothal. With this, Zhong Badu could no longer sit calmly. What was going on here? Did you all really dare to break the betrothal with him? It was true that he admired Long Yushan's beauty and strength, but what he prized more was her bloodline of the dragon tribe. In a unity with a member of their Zhong clan, it was possible that an incredibly strong descendant could be born in future. This was a matter that the Open Clouds King himself had personally commanded. He had to complete this mission fully. Furthermore, the Open Clouds Forbidden Land had long since publicized this betrothal. If the betrothal was suddenly broken at this time, both himself and the Open Clouds Forbidden Land would be humiliated. It definitely couldn't happen. He immediately went off to seek Long Yushan, yet was refused entrance, which gave him a stronger feeling of foreboding. After a few days, Ling Han issued a challenge to Zhong Badu. If Zhong Badu won, he would leave without another word, but if Zhong Badu lost, then he would have to obediently cancel the betrothal. What an intolerable bully. Zhong Badu's fury could not be restrained. He was the son of a forbidden land. When had he suffered such injustice in his whole life? He did not even consider, and immediately agreed to Ling Han's request. He would battle. Zhong Badu smirked internally. At first, he had planned to kill Ling Han after he left the Long tribe. Since this brat was actually so determined to seek death himself, then he would naturally have to oblige. The two sides made an agreement to battle in the galaxy 3 days later. 3 days passed very quickly. Both Ling Han and Zhong Badu had arrived in the galaxy. Yang Zige and Jing Yi were standing behind Zhong Badu, and there was not a single person behind Ling Han. The Long tribe were not helping either side, and were standing in a more central position, not siding with either party. At first, Long Xianyue had wanted to cheer Ling Han on, yet Long Yushan had grabbed her and stopped her. Thus, she could only gloomily watch as a spectator in the middle. Ling Han! Zhong Badu roared in fury, his voice sounding out like thunder. There was actually a sliver of dragon's might in his voice as well. It seemed like the Zhong clan had other intentions in wanting to marry Long Yushan. Otherwise, to preserve the purity of their bloodline, forbidden lands would usually seek their partners from among their own clans. Ling Han dug his ear, and blew out a breath. What are you calling out so loud for? I am not deaf. Why do I think that not only are you deaf, you are also blind and an idiot as well? Zhong Badu smirked coldly. If you had eyes, and had a brain, you would know that you should not have made an enemy of me. Even if you are a saint, you would also be turned into ash by our Open Clouds Forbidden Land. Pa, pa, pa. Ling Han clapped his hands. Your words sound better than any song. I will give you some encouragement, and have no fear that you would become proud of it. Zhong Badu looked at Ling Han. Where exactly are you from? If he did not have the backing on the level of Saint King, how could he dare to oppose him? If he could manage to cultivate to this kind of level and was still an idiot, he really did not believe that was really possible. Ling Han, a lone cultivator, Ling Han stated calmly. Since that is the case, then you can just die. Zhong Badu had lost all patience. His figure charged out. He was going to crush Ling Han to pieces. Chapter 16-17, Time Dragon Tribe. Boom! Symbols of the Great Tao encircled Zhong Badu as he unleashed his might as a saint. A silver river materialized in the air, a whopping 7 million heavenly bodies contained within it. Small saints could at most only unleash 10 million heavenly bodies. If they didn't comprehend the great Tao and advance to the level of medium saint, they definitely wouldn't be able to cultivate over 10 million heavenly bodies. Thus, it was evident that Zhong Badu's cultivation had already reached the late stage of a small saint. He made a pressing motion with his palm, his origin power gathering and forming an even larger palm. Great stars materialized one after another, yet they were like mere pellets before his formidable palm. The power of this palm was utterly terrifying. Ling Han snapped his fingers and activated his killing formations, unleashing a streak of sword light that slashed toward the colossal palm. Compared to Zhong Badu's palm, this streak of sword light was incredibly small. It was merely 3 feet long. Meanwhile, Zhong Badu's colossal palm was larger than even heavenly bodies. Their attacks were on 2 completely different levels. Yet, upon impact, Zhong Badu's colossal palm was instantly sliced into 2 by Ling Han's sword light. Zhong Badu grunted in pain. Raising his right hand, he saw that there was blood dripping down from his palm. Although that colossal palm had only been a projection, it was still inextricably linked to him. Generally speaking, however, he wouldn't be affected even if the palm were shattered. Otherwise, wouldn't unleashing such an attack be the same as engaging in close-quarter combat? However, Ling Han's sword light was far too devastating. Not only did it cut through his origin power palm, but it even cut through to the origin and wounded his body. "You're a measly eternal river tier cultivator, yet your attacks are actually this powerful," he exclaimed slowly. There was a look of extreme caution on his face. He had exchanged a few casual strikes with Ling Han before, and thus he was already aware that Ling Han possessed the battle prowess of a saint. However, he certainly hadn't expected Ling Han to be powerful enough to rival him. This was simply unfathomable. Yang Zige finally understood why Zhong Badu had smacked him across the face. As it turned out, he had been rubbing salt into Zhong Badu's wounds. He exchanged a glance with Jing Yi, and they both saw a hint of worry in each other's eyes. Zhong Badu won't lose to Ling Han, will he? No, he definitely won't. They hurriedly shook their heads. Zhong Badu was the king tier of the younger generation in the open clouds forbidden land. The fact that he had become a saint at only 100,000 years of age was proof enough of his mighty status. His talent was simply heaven-defying. Regardless of how freakish Ling Han was, he was still only at the eternal river tier. So, how could he hope to defeat a saint? Yang Zige and Jing Yi could only reassure themselves with such thoughts. Before witnessing this battle, could they have fathomed an eternal river tier cultivator rivaling a Genesis tier saint? This being the case, would it still come as a huge surprise if Ling Han genuinely defeated a saint? Ling Han, you've succeeded in capturing my attention, Zhong Badu said with a smile. Ling Han possessed the battle prowess of a saint even though he was only at the eternal river tier. It was clear that he possessed some earth-shattering secrets. Zhong Badu was hell-bent on obtaining them. However, Ling Han wore an expression of pure disgust as he said, "Disgusting freak, I didn't think you were this kind of person." Zhong Badu faltered for a moment before finally realizing the reason behind Ling Han's disgust. He couldn't help but flare up in rage. They were both saints, or at least both possessed the battle prowess of saints, and thus they represented the most powerful beings in the world. Yet, Ling Han was actually slandering him without any hesitation. Where was his demeanor as a saint? Die! Zhong Badu roared, his black hair billowing up into the sky. Pang, pang, pang. His clothes exploded into shreds, leaving only his pants intact. This pair of pants was most likely a treasured armor that possessed an incredible toughness. Divine patterns started to appear on his skin, and these were saint-level patterns that could gather the Tao of heaven and earth and have them encircle his body. He would kill Ling Han, and directly pluck his soul to learn his secrets. Dragon of Eternity, he roared. A giant bronze dragon soared out from his chest. This dragon measured 3,000 meters in length, and its appearance was extremely illusory. It was as if it existed in the past, yet as if it existed in the future at the same time. However, one thing was certain: it definitely didn't exist in the present. Time Dragon Tribe, the members of the Long Tribe all exclaimed in astonishment. There was a look of utter shock on their faces. Dragon Tribe. This was an extremely general and broad concept. According to the legends, the first dragon was nurtured and birthed by heaven. This dragon was called the Origin Dragon. The Origin Dragon bore 9 children, and they were the Golden Dragon, Green Dragon, Black Dragon, Crimson Dragon, and so on. These secondary dragon then copulated with beings of other tribes, and birthed even more diverse descendants. Thus, dragon tribes that possessed different bloodlines naturally possessed different abilities as well. For example, the dragon tribe of Gathered Seas planet was descended from the Crimson Dragon, and they were skilled at manipulating fire. As for the Bronze Dragons, they were the most mysterious members of the dragon tribes. This was because they wielded the power of time. Fittingly, they were named the Time Dragon Tribe. Time, space, darkness, massacre, and so on. These were all regulations that were extremely difficult to grasp. However, members of the Time Dragon Tribe innately possessed the power of time. Thus, they were naturally viewed as impressively powerful beings, and they were also regarded as the elites of the dragon tribes. Who would have thought that the Zhong clan also possessed the bloodline of a dragon tribe? Gasp. Don't tell me that their reason for marriage is to combine the bloodlines of the 2 dragon tribes so that they can bear descendants who possess both the power of time and the power of flames. The members of the Long tribe all speculated over this. Otherwise, why would the Zhong clan have traveled hundreds of millions of kilometers for a marriage with the Long tribe? The power of time surged through the air as the bronze dragon soared toward Ling Han. Ling Han threw a punch, yet it was unable to cause any damage as it struck the bronze dragon. In fact, it was unable to shift even a single dragon scale. This dragon didn't belong to the present, so how could it be struck by an attack that existed in the present? Ling Han smiled as he unleashed another punch. This time, however, he imbued his punch with the tide of the ages. Pung! This strike finally landed on the bronze dragon's body. However, even though Tide of the Ages was a celestial technique, its power was limited by Ling Han's lowly cultivation level. As such, there was no way for Ling Han to unleash the true might of this celestial technique. The bronze dragon simply faltered for a moment before continuing to charge at Ling Han. Even so, Zhong Badu was still astounded by what he saw. His opponent had actually managed to affect the power of time. This was truly incredible. At the same time, this further heightened his interest and curiosity regarding Ling Han's secrets. He could barely wait to make them his. Ling Han attacked again, activating his killing formations that released a brilliant light. This brilliant light then formed a sword ray that slashed at the bronze dragon. However, it was a shame that the bronze dragon didn't belong to the present. As such, this sword ray would be unable to wound it regardless of how powerful it was. Ha ha ha. Zhong Badu roared with laughter as he commanded the bronze dragon to pounce on Ling Han. Upon being struck by the power of time, one portion of Ling Han's body would enter the future, one portion would remain in the present, and one portion would return to the past. In other words, he could only suffer one fate: dismemberment. This was a celestial technique of the open clouds forbidden land, and it was an incredibly powerful technique that was inherited through their bloodline. The bronze dragon was already upon Ling Han, its 4 claws locked onto his shoulders and legs. Shatter! Zhong Badu roared. However, Ling Han remained standing where he was, completely unscathed. Shatter! 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 Zhong Badu roared. He injected a burst of power into the bronze dragon with each roar, raising the overall power of the dragon. Ling Han cocked his head slightly, poking his head out from behind the bronze dragon. There was a smile on his face, and he asked, "Are you tired from all that shouting? If you are, then why don't you take a rest? Don't damage your throat with all that shouting." How is this possible? Zhong Badu was transfixed with shock. That was the bronze dragon, a dragon that possessed the power of time. Upon being attacked by it, one would instantly be dismembered into several pieces. Yet, what in the world was happening right now? He funneled all of his power into the bronze dragon, yet Ling Han remained unscathed and unmoving regardless of how the power of time struck him. Indeed, the power of time wasn't all-powerful. Ling Han's physique had already reached the level of saintly material, so as a fellow small saint, how could Zhong Badu's power of time damage him? Ling Han shuddered slightly as he unleashed a Dao manifestation that measured over 30,000 meters in height. This Dao manifestation grabbed the bronze dragon and, following a loud roar, ripped it from Ling Han's body. It held the dragon as if it were holding a snake. How domineering. Chapter 1618, A Wisp of Celestial Qi. Ling Han's Dao manifestation towered into the sky, a bronze dragon in its hand. It was like a god of war, a dragon slayer. This was an astounding sight, one that snatched the attention of everyone, and caused them to involuntarily hold their breath. The women of the Long tribe all had stars in their eyes, their expressions dreamy and intoxicated. Ling Han looked at Zhong Badu, and calmly asked, "Got any more attacks?" His voice was calm, yet it carried a hint of killing intent. In any case, he had already made an enemy of the Open Cloud's forbidden land, so he might as well take things even further and directly kill Zhong Badu. Anyhow, he had destroyed their wedding, so would the Open Cloud's forbidden land let him off the hook? Impossible. That being the case, it was only natural for him to kill Zhong Badu first. At any rate, he didn't like this person anyway. Moreover, this wedding would only be considered as completely and thoroughly ruined if he killed Zhong Badu. Zhong Badu's aura of might was instantly shattered by Ling Han's attack. The Time Dragon was one of his trump cards, yet it had actually failed to injure even one hair of Ling Han's. This was a huge blow to his confidence. At this moment, he couldn't help but think, will I actually be defeated? However, he immediately shook his head to rid himself of this thought. This was impossible. And he wouldn't allow it to happen, either. He was a saint, and he was more so a supreme prodigy of the Open Cloud's forbidden land. As such, how could he lose to a youth, one who was only at the eternal river tier? 9 meridian celestial sword, he roared. Wisps of celestial light instantly rose from 9 meridians inside his body. He then retrieved and activated a saint tool, which lit up with an array of symbols and unleashed a boundless saintly might. However, this wasn't the most terrifying aspect of his attack. Celestial light continued to gather inside his body, forming a razor-sharp blade on the tip of his sword. After imbuing his saint tool with a wisp of celestial qi, its sharpness was now imposing and overwhelming. To say nothing of Ling Han, a measly eternal river tier cultivator, even small saints and medium saints wouldn't dare to be struck by this saint tool. If they were struck, the celestial qi contained within the saint tool would instantly obliterate their divine sense. This secret technique was a celestial king tier technique. However, it was a shame that the Open Cloud's king had only obtained an incomplete copy of this celestial king tier technique. While breaching the underground palace storage to steal this celestial king tier technique, the Heavenly River King had severed one of his dragon claws, and also obliterated a large portion of the scroll that held the celestial king tier technique. Although the damaged scroll was still relatively precious, enabling those at the Genesis tier to cultivate a wisp of celestial qi and boundlessly raise their battle prowess, it was ultimately not powerful enough to help them open the gates to the celestial realm anymore. Otherwise, the Open Cloud's king would have entered the celestial realm long ago. There was simply no way he would be content with remaining in the immortal realm. In any case, would this technique not be powerful enough to deal with a measly eternal river tier cultivator? A look of apprehension spread across Ling Han's face as he glanced at the saint tool. He could detect from this saint tool an aura that was similar to that of his divine demon sword. Celestial level power. However, compared to his divine demon sword, the celestial level power of this saint tool was far too weak. In fact, it was so weak that it was barely detectable. Even so, Ling Han didn't dare to underestimate it. After all, celestial level power was a huge threat to any cultivator of the immortal realm. Die! Zhong Badu bellowed as he charged at Ling Han, sword in hand. In the beginning, he had been content with engaging in long-distance battle. After all, this was the battle style that cultivators were the most familiar with. Now, however, he was doing the exact opposite. He wanted to engage in close-quarter combat with Ling Han. This was because Saint tools were the most effective when they directly struck their target. Swoosh! 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 Heavenly bodies quaked and the entire galaxy shuddered as the Saint tool swept through the vacuum. The wisp of celestial chi on the tip of the sword was immensely destructive toward the space of the immortal realm, and it viciously tore through the void, forming numerous black holes in its wake. Ling Han shook his right hand, and summoned the divine demon sword. If we're going to compete in terms of Saint tools, who's more afraid of whom? Clang, 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 clang. The divine demon sword continued to clash with Zhong Badu's Saint tool. Both had a toughness of level 17 godly metal, and thus it was only natural that neither was able to defeat the other. However, the divine demon sword was a celestial tool in its essence, so even though it hadn't fully awakened yet, it was still hundreds of times more powerful than the Saint tool that only contained a wisp of celestial chi. After continuously clashing many times, the celestial chi on the Saint tool finally started to waver. Like a struggling fish on land, it looked like it was about to die out at any moment. What? Zhong Badu was truly flustered at this moment. The 9-meridian celestial sword was his most powerful technique. In fact, the 9-meridian celestial king had once killed a celestial king in a single strike after unleashing this technique. Now, however, this technique was about to be shattered under Ling Han's relentless attacks? Just how unfathomable was this? I'll kill you first, and I'll send the Open Clouds King to hell to meet up with you later. Ling Han said. He unleashed the 9 heavens flame from his left hand as he continued to brandish the divine demon sword with his right. These flames were also at the celestial king level. Even though he was unable to unleash their full power because he was still extremely weak now, Zhong Badu was also only at the immortal level as well. Who in the world are you? Zhong Badu asked in a quiet voice. By the looks of it, it seemed like there was great animosity between Ling Han and the Open Clouds Forbidden Land. You don't need to know. Now, rest in peace. Ling Han activated all of the killing formations in his body, causing his battle prowess to rise explosively. In combination with his divine demon sword and 9 heavens flame, he was already close to invincible among the level of small saints. Damn it! Zhong Badu brandished his sword to parry, yet he was pushed back dozens of kilometers each time he blocked. He was being completely overwhelmed by Ling Han. What terrified him the most was the sword and flames in Ling Han's hands. They were far too petrifying. In fact, he felt like he would face instant death if he came into contact with either of the two. This apprehension undoubtedly hindered his ability to battle at his full potential. He felt a strong urge to distance himself from Ling Han, yet this was easier said than done. After all, it was he who had actively charged over just then. Meanwhile, Ling Han formed a cage with his 9 heavens flame to prevent Zhong Badu from escaping. They would fight to the death inside this flaming cage. Pooh! Zhong Badu spat out a mouthful of blood, an incredulous look on his face. He was no match for Ling Han, even in close-quarter combat. This realization almost drove him crazy. He was a small saint, yet his power was actually inferior to that of a measly Eternal River tier cultivator. This was simply unfathomable, even if his opponent was at the pinnacle level of the Eternal River tier. 3 strikes, and you'll be on your way to the afterlife. Ling Han said coldly. In your dreams. Zhong Badu said with clenched teeth. He started to combust his source power in a last-ditch attempt to escape. However, would his actions faze Ling Han? Trapped inside the cage formed by the 9 heavens flame, it was simply impossible for him to escape. Have mercy, a melodious yet grave voice suddenly said. This voice had abruptly arrived from Gathered Sea's planet after cutting across vast expanses of space. Dragon's might surged throughout the space, tumultuous as a tsunami. Our respects to Ancestor. The members of the Long tribe all kneeled down on a single knee. Even Long Yushan wore a respectful expression, her hands obediently by her sides. The owner of this voice was none other than the ancient ancestor of the Long tribe, a formidable medium saint. Zhong Badu instantly regained his composure. His saintly battle against Ling Han had been so intense that it had even caught the attention of the secluding ancient ancestor of the Long tribe. Now that he was aware of the situation, could this ancient ancestor allow Ling Han to kill him before his very eyes? Of course he couldn't. Or else the Long tribe would also be dragged into this mess. Choosing inaction while seeing him being killed, what kind of message would that be sending? Ling Han paid no heed to the voice. He had already made his decision, and no one was going to change his mind. Die. Zhong Badu was already starting to relax, yet Ling Han's reaction instantly caused his hair to stand on ends. How are you so stubborn? A medium saint has already spoken, yet you're still not heeding his words? He had no choice but to raise his arms to parry. Unsurprisingly, he spat out another mouthful of blood as he was sent stumbling back by Ling Han's overwhelming power. I said, stop. A loud roar traveled over from Gathered Sea's planet again. This time, however, the dragon's might became tangible, with a crimson true dragon materializing in the air as the voice boomed over. This true dragon then swooped down at Ling Han. Ling Han completely ignored this true dragon as he frenziedly swung his sword at Zhong Badu. He was hellbent on killing this person. Pung! The crimson true dragon crashed into the cage that was formed from the Nine Heavens flame, the powerful impact instantly shattering the cage. However, the Nine Heavens flame was far too high in quality as well, so it also incinerated the crimson true dragon into nothingness. Zhong Badu seized this opportunity to flee. Third strike. Ling Han's ice-cold voice suddenly said from behind him. Chapter 1619, Leaving. Swoosh. A streak of brilliant sword light slashed through the air, illuminating the entire galaxy. Pooh! The sword slashed down, and Zhong Badu was instantly sliced in two. Saintly blood sprayed into the surroundings and blotted out the stars. No! Zhong Badu roared in terror. Who wasn't afraid of death? Moreover, he was a supreme prodigy who had a limitless future before him. Thus, he had never imagined that death would befall him so soon. His left and right hand both grabbed onto a half of his body, and tried to mend them back together. Wang, wang, wang. The power of time pulsated inside his body, attempting to reverse the passage of time and return him to some point in the past, thereby allowing him to avert death. However, he had been struck by the divine demon sword, and thus it was impossible for him to reverse the passage of time. After all, he was no celestial. Pa! Zhong Badu's body exploded into pieces, causing flesh and blood to rain down on the surroundings. His divine sense had already been destroyed by the divine demon sword, so it was impossible for him to revive. Heaven and earth grieved, expressing their sorrow at the passing of a saint. Ah! There was a furious roar as an elite strode over from Gathered Sea's planet in a single step. He was tall and solidly built, yet his hair was already white and his appearance was already extremely old. However, the aura that radiated from him was like that of a wild demon, so formidable and imposing that no one dared to look at him directly. He was none other than the medium saint ancestor of the Long tribe. Brat, you're seeking death, the Long tribe ancestor roared as he unleashed an explosive punch at Ling Han. A strange expression involuntarily spread across Ling Han's face. Although this punch appeared extremely domineering, its destructive ability was in fact severely limited. If he faced this punch head-on, he would at most be sent flying an incredibly great distance. However, he wouldn't suffer any severe wounds. This old man had intentions of covering for him. Interesting. Very interesting. By the looks of it, it wasn't only Long Yushan who had been against the marriage. Even the ancestor of the Long tribe had actually been against this marriage. It was just that the open cloud's forbidden land was far too powerful, meaning that the Long tribe had no ability to reject their proposal. However, now that Ling Han had killed Zhong Badu, there was no more groom for the bride to be wed to. That being the case, how could the wedding proceed? However, the ancestor of the Long tribe naturally couldn't pat Ling Han on the shoulders and congratulate him on a job well done, could he? Thus, it was imperative that he lashed out and acted as if he were boiling with rage. He would send Ling Han flying with this punch, and then chase him for a while before giving up. He would then naturally return back to the Long tribe. The fact that Ling Han could kill Zhong Badu signified that he already possessed the battle prowess of a saint. Thus, it wouldn't be out of the ordinary for him, a medium saint, to fail to catch up to him. To say nothing of medium saints, even saint kings couldn't necessarily catch up to small saints. The punch landed, and Ling Han violently spat a mouthful of blood before letting the momentum carry him, and instantly vanishing into a small black dot in the distance. This blood wasn't his, but rather blood that he had retrieved from the Black Tower from some black dog. "Don't run, you wicked brat," the ancestor of the Long tribe roared. He unfurled a golden path as he chased after Ling Han. At the same time, he couldn't help but praise him in his mind. This brat was truly clever, and he had instantly understood his true intentions. Not only that, but he had even cooperated with him perfectly. If he hadn't been so sure of the power of his own strike, he would have truly questioned whether or not his strike had actually crippled Ling Han. He hurriedly flew after Ling Han, yet he realized that he couldn't find him anymore. He was genuinely stunned this time. Was Ling Han's truly this quick? He was so quick that even he couldn't catch up to him. He stopped in mid-air and pretended to scan his surroundings. This action would be recorded in his memory, and he could use it to convince the open cloud's forbidden land of his actions in the future. Anyhow, it was a pleasant surprise that Ling Han possessed such techniques. It also saved him quite a bit of acting and effort. After scanning the surroundings, he proceeded to return to Gathered Sea's planet. A saint had died here, and they were more so an individual who had a saint king in their clan. Thus, this was naturally a critical event that he had to treat with utmost care. Ling Han exited the Black Tower and calmly retrieved the cloud-piercing shuttle. He then casually flew into the distance. This time, he wouldn't return to Woodfigure Planet. Instead, his destination was Joint Peace Planet. Since he had already gathered all 4 materials, he naturally had to return to visit the Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire. This return journey took quite a long time, requiring an entire 2.5 years to complete. However, Ling Han, the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden, and the others didn't waste this time. With an abundant supply of alchemical pills and the reincarnation tree, they all used this time to raise their cultivation level. Upon arriving on Joint Peace Planet, the Empress suddenly awoke from her deep-level cultivation. She had succeeded. She had cultivated 10 million heavenly bodies, the pinnacle amount for heavenly body tier cultivators. Ling Han was overjoyed at this, and he couldn't help but pick the Empress up and spin her around a few times. He was extremely happy for the Empress. Although 10 million heavenly bodies was the theoretical maximum for the Eternal River tier, no one had ever actually reached this pinnacle before. In other words, the Empress had created history. This also signified that her future was indescribably bright and limitless. Regarding the fact that the Empress could now strive to reach the saint tier, and then make love with him, this hadn't actually crossed his mind at this moment. Of course, he would naturally think of this after calming down from his wild excitement. Now, however, he was purely feeling happiness for the Empress. The Empress was naturally ecstatic as well. She wrapped her arms around Ling Han's shoulders and pressed his face into her large and soft breasts. When Ling Han finally put her down, she leaned forward slightly and pecked him on the lips. "I'll be able to advance to the saint tier soon," she whispered into Ling Han's ears. A sweet fragrance wafted into Ling Han's nose. Ling Han was intoxicated, and he involuntarily hugged the Empress even tighter. One of his hands started to naughtily creep towards the Empress' voluptuous breasts. "Are you trying to seduce me?" he asked. "Of course," the Empress admitted without hesitation. "You seductress." Ling Han passionately kissed her a few times, yet didn't dare to go any further. He was already feeling the urge to push the Empress over and make love with her with no regard for anything else. However, since he had already waited for this long, he naturally couldn't cave in now. A charming smile spread across the Empress' face. The two of them exited the Black Tower, while the heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden continued to cultivate inside. She was also a step away from advancing to the Saint tier. The inheritance from the three true Phoenixes was truly astounding. One day passed, and they finally arrived at the Great Ling Empire. "Your Majesty! Your Majesty! Your Majesty!" The ministers of the Imperial Empire all came out to greet Ling Han and the others. Among them were his two brothers, Feng Peyun and Murong Qing. Meanwhile, the rock golem started to run around Ling Han like a dog, an obsequious expression on its face. Ling Han laughed loudly as he wrapped his arms around his brother's shoulders and walked to the palace with them. He spent some time reminiscing with his brothers before raising the level of the rock golem. Only then did he set off for the agriculture-enclosed mountains, where the Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire rested. He didn't know if the Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire was severely wounded, or if he had been suppressed there. In any case, the lower realm held a huge number of secrets that could attract the attention of even celestial kings, for example, the Black Tower. Celestial kings, these were beings who stood at the pinnacle of the celestial realm. Moreover, each of them had created their own cultivation techniques after studying and analyzing the cultivation techniques of the other celestial kings. For example, the creator of the indestructible Heaven Scroll had also absorbed the knowledge and ideas of many other celestial kings in the process of creating this cultivation technique. Ling Han and the Empress arrived in the depths of the agriculture-enclosed mountains, and stood before the cave that radiated with an air of boundless darkness. Both of them had already reached the pinnacle level of the Eternal River tier, yet they were still unable to see through this profound darkness. "I'll tie this rope to my waist, and if I don't return after a day, then use it to drag me out," Ling Han said to the Empress. The Empress nodded in reply. They were naturally well prepared this time. Ling Han tied the rope to his waist, and this was a rope that had been made from the silk of an azure cloud spider. In other words, it was extremely strong and tough, resistant to even sharp blades. Ling Han then strode into the darkness of the cave. Chapter 1620, Meeting the Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire again. Darkness enveloped Ling Han as he entered the cave, weakening his senses of sight, hearing, and touch. In the end, he was completely stripped of all of his senses, just like the first time. In fact, he couldn't even sense his own existence anymore, could sense neither the flow of his origin power or the beat of his heart. It was as if he were lying in eternal slumber in a dark and silent tomb. He couldn't escape this phenomenon, even as an Eternal River tier cultivator. Ling Han activated his killing formations and unleashed an attack. In reality, he was unsure of whether he had actually launched an attack or not. All he could sense was that he had perhaps launched the attack. However, nothing changed at all. By the looks of it, even a saint-level power was unable to overcome this profound darkness. Ling Han was now certain that this was something created by a celestial-level elite. After pondering for a moment, he retrieved his divine demon sword. A tiny orb of light instantly appeared. Although this light was hazy, it was something that Ling Han could genuinely see. Sure enough, celestial-level power was able to resist this darkness. However, the divine demon sword still wasn't powerful enough. Ling Han put away the divine demon sword. Boom! The 9 heavens flame exploded to life on his hand, and it was instantly as if a small candle had been lit in the pitch darkness of the cave. Although its brightness was incredibly dim, it was still sufficient as a light source. This can work. Ling Han was elated upon discovering this. Wherever the 9 heavens flame shone, he was able to fully regain his senses. It was as if he had come back to life. He stuck to the cave wall as he advanced due to the limited amount of light. He could only ensure that he was on the right path if he stuck by the cave wall. In fact, this cave wasn't actually that deep. However, because of Ling Han's slow pace, it took him an entire half a day to finally arrive at the deepest part of the cave. Here, there was a stone room with 4 bare walls. In the middle of it, there rested a stone statue that hadn't changed a single bit compared to the last time that he had been here. It was as if that were just yesterday. Huh? Brat, how did you get here? The Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire asked in astonishment. Indeed, Ling Han had only managed to get here last time thanks to the help of Hunyo. Meanwhile, Ling Han himself had been like a headless chicken. Now, however, Ling Han had actually come here by himself. This was indeed something that was surprising. Ling Han smiled faintly and said, "If Senior doesn't welcome me, I can take my leave right away." "Hold it right there," the Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire hurriedly said. "Have you obtained the 4 items?" "Yes, I was fortunate enough to obtain them all," Ling Han answered with a nod. "But you're clearly only at the Eternal River tier." "Huh?" The Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire suddenly faltered before saying, "You're a bloody freak. You've actually inscribed that many formations inside your body? Although each of them is pathetically weak by itself, the entirety of them is able to elevate your battle prowess to the low extreme of the Genesis tier. This. Even I was unable to achieve this during my time." Ling Han laughed and said, "Does Senior believe me when I say that I've already completed the mission now? Where are they?" "Hurry up and give them to me," the Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire said in a slightly tense and nervous voice. "That, no pay, no goods," Ling Han said. "Stinky brat, are you afraid that I'll cheat you? In any case, the technique that I promised you isn't a top-notch celestial." The Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire immediately shut up upon realizing that he had made a slip of the tongue. "Oh," Ling Han said with a nod. "So Senior was planning to use an ordinary celestial technique to trick me." "Aha, the immovable deity metal body is a mystical power that I spent a lot of effort to obtain from an ancient site. Although it's not my most powerful technique, it's already more than powerful enough for you. Anyhow, you won't be able to learn it if it's too powerful anyway," the Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire explained. What could he do now that Ling Han had the power over his lifeline? In reality, Ling Han had only made the remark jokingly. Celestial techniques were indeed ranked in terms of power, but one also needed to take into account their suitability. In terms of this, Ling Han felt that the immovable deity metal body was an extremely good fit for himself. "Then please teach me the technique, Senior." Ling Han retrieved the true dragon horn, heavenly phoenix feather, and the other 2 items as he said this. A soft glow appeared on the stone statue before a white light orb floated out and hovered toward Ling Han. Ling Han raised his hand and tapped the white orb with his finger. Countless symbols instantly flashed in his mind, teaching him secret techniques that couldn't be expressed through words. This was none other than the mystical power, immovable deity metal body. "Brat, place these 4 divine items around the stone statue as I specify," the Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire said. Ling Han did as he was told. Meanwhile, he communicated with Small Tower in his mind, preparing to respond should the Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire suddenly decide to attack him. If that were to happen, he would respond with force even if that meant running the risk of having the Black Tower being discovered by the Celestial Kings. If he lost his life, what use would keeping this secret be? Crackle. An arc of lightning burst forth from the left eye of the stone statue, while a column of fire burst forth from its right eye. Meanwhile, the stone statue radiated with a soft glow as the true dragon horn and other 3 items rose into the air. The items then started to resonate with each other before suddenly fusing together into one. At the same time, the arc of lightning and the column of fire intertwined together in a fierce and blazing display. The sight of this was so intense that Ling Han was unable to see what was occurring inside of them. After a long while, the brilliant radiance finally dimmed down, allowing Ling Han to see a small person appear before him. This was a child who looked to be around 3 years old. He was stark naked, and his skin was white and delicate. Ling Han suddenly felt as if he had been struck by lightning. This isn't the heavenly emperor of thunder and fire, is it? Stinky brat, what are you staring at? Hurry up and give me some clothes. Sure enough, the child spoke in an adult-like voice. Huh, how many years has it been? I can finally use my mouth to speak. This is incredible. Ling Han tossed him some clothes, and said, was Senior severely wounded? So you remained here to recuperate? You guessed it, the heavenly emperor of thunder and fire said with a sigh. At that time, I possessed extraordinary talent, so I naturally became arrogant and conceited, offending many people. As a result, I was hunted by an elite, and my physical body was completely obliterated by him. A wisp of my damaged soul came to the ancient realm, and I had initially wanted to find a body to possess. However, there was unexpected turbulence in the space, and I somehow ended up arriving in this small world. There's a mysterious power in this place, and it suppressed me upon my arrival. The situation was so dire that I was forced to rest my soul in an underground sea of lightning and fire for tens of thousands of years before I was finally able to form that stone statue. My initial plan was to guide the explorers of this cave to help me. However, I was unexpectedly unable to control my own defensive power. Although the boundless darkness offered my damaged soul protection, it also became the shackles that bound me to this place. Thanks to the girl last time, and you this time, I'm finally able to free myself from this place. Although this body is incomparable to a divine fetus, it's still a body that's been formed from 4 saintly materials, after all. I guess it's just passable for use. After all, the power of celestials comes from their divine senses, and not from their physical bodies. Ling Han quietly listened to him speak. He discovered that the heavenly emperor of thunder and fire had the potential to become a chatterbox. He had only asked him a single question, yet the heavenly emperor of thunder and fire had given him an essay as an answer. Or perhaps he had been lonely for too long, so he couldn't help but speak more now that he could finally talk to a real person. What does Senior plan to do next? Ling Han asked. Cultivate, of course. Although I've refined my new body from 4 saintly materials, it's only saintly material, after all. Right now, my cultivation level is only at the low extreme of the Genesis tier. Moreover, my divine sense is still severely wounded, and it's impossible for me to fully recover in the short term, the heavenly emperor of thunder and fire replied with a sigh. Dare I ask, Senior, what was your cultivation level in the past? Ling Han asked in curiosity. Immortal Palace tier. Chapter 1621, Another One. The Severing Mundane tier, Dividing Soul tier, Immortal Palace tier, Ascending Origin tier, and Celestial King tier. The Immortal Palace tier was the 3rd major tier of the celestial realm, and this was equivalent to the heavenly body tier in the immortal realm. One could already be regarded as an elite after reaching this cultivation level. Ling Han gazed at the child before him, and he could no longer bring himself to call him a senior. Doing so would feel far too strange. He chuckled and said, "Don't you have a name?" The child puffed his chest out and said, "I'm called the Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire." He looked as haughty and arrogant as could be. Ling Han shot a sideways glance at him and didn't reply. He had already fulfilled his agreement with him, and both of them had already obtained what they desired. Thus, neither of them owed the other. That being the case, he patted his hands and started to leave the cave. However, after taking just a step, he felt a tug on his clothes. Glancing back, he saw that there was a small hand tightly gripping the corner of his clothes. "Say, your courage hasn't shrunken along with your size, has it?" You're too afraid to leave by yourself? Ling Han asked with a smile. Pay. When I traveled the world before, which ancient site was I afraid to enter? You actually dare to say that I'm cowardly? The heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire wore an expression of disdain. Then why are you tugging on my clothes? Ling Han asked. I don't know how to leave this place, the heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire replied with an awkward expression. Pooh. Ling Han instantly spluttered with laughter. You were the one who created this place, yet you're unable to leave by yourself now? Rubbish. I set this place up when I was still relatively powerful. However, my strength is only at the low extreme of the Genesis tier now, so how can I leave? The heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire said through clenched teeth. Why was this stinky brat so difficult? Couldn't he just lead the way out when told to? Ling Han pondered for a moment before asking, any guidance fees? You. How bloody avaricious. The heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire wore a surprised look. Why hadn't he realized that this brat was such an avaricious person before? Ling Han laughed loudly, and said, I'm just kidding, don't take it so seriously. However, if you truly want to thank me, I'm not against receiving some small benefits. After all, that would be your expression of gratitude. The heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire rolled his eyes in reply. Ling Han had already rendered him completely speechless. Meanwhile, Ling Han activated his 9 heavens flame to ward off the darkness. Huh! The heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire was astonished upon seeing this. Why do I feel such apprehension toward these flames? Even if I were at the peak of my powers, I still wouldn't want to touch these flames. Ling Han didn't explain. Ancestral flames were far too precious. The two of them were on relatively good terms right now, and he didn't want this relationship to be ruined because of some treasures. The two of them started to exit the cave. However, after making it 2/3 of the way out, Ling Han suddenly felt the rope around his waist start to tighten. As it turned out, one day had already passed, and the Empress was starting to drag him back out as per their agreement. As such, his speed instantly became much quicker, and the child behind him started to billow in the wind like the sail of a ship. Whoosh! Before long, they had already arrived at the mouth of the cave. Huh! A look of astonishment flashed across the Empress' face as she saw the heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire. Ling Han had entered the cave alone, yet he had now come back out with a child. This was naturally very strange. However, she could sense the powerful aura of the child, and this made her feel as if she were facing a formidable enemy. Oh, this young lady is truly beautiful. I've never seen anyone more beautiful than her, even in the celestial realm, the heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire remarked of the Empress. That's my wife, don't stare so much. Ling Han used his hands to cover the child's eyes as he said this. She won't lose a chunk of flesh or anything if I look at her. How stingy. The heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire muttered. Perhaps it was because he was too young right now, and this also affected his way of thinking, but he didn't continue to stare at the stunningly beautiful Empress. I've got nothing to do anyway, so I'll just follow you around for now. I'll return to the celestial realm after I advance to the high extreme of the Genesis tier. You're really not holding back, are you? A strange smile tugged at the corners of Ling Han's lips, and he said, don't regret this decision of yours in the future. He had far too many enemies. At least, the open clouds Forbidden Land might come over and hunt him down at any moment. In reality, he hadn't resolved his problems with the 8 stones Forbidden Land either. If they confirmed that he couldn't attain the power of a Saint King anymore, they would definitely continue to target him. In terms of the celestial realm, he had also destroyed Han Chi's physical body. Thus, it was hard to say whether or not a severing mundane tier Grand Elder might suddenly come to hunt him down one day. Following him would be fraught with danger. However, how could the heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire know that Ling Han was such a troublemaker? He wore an indifferent expression upon hearing Ling Han's remark. In any case, he was a small saint right now, and his battle prowess could more so rival that of a medium saint. Thus, how many people in the ancient realm would he need to be afraid of? It would be interesting to see what expression he wore the day that a bunch of great saints and saint kings, perhaps even severing mundane tier grand elders, appeared before Ling Han. Ling Han returned to the Great Ling Empire to leave some cultivation resources for them before retrieving his cloud-piercing shuttle and setting off for Wood Figure Planet. Meanwhile, the Empress entered the Black Tower to continue her cultivation and comprehension. She was going to advance to the Saint tier as quickly as she could. Her breakthrough would definitely be an earth-shattering event. She possessed a divine fetus, Celestial King tier cultivation techniques, and had also formed 10 million heavenly bodies and cultivated the regulations of the two realms. Thus, her power would reach the peak stage of the small saint once she broke through to the saint tier, and her battle prowess would also be incredible. Otherwise, it would be completely unjust to the 10 million heavenly bodies that she had spent so much time and effort in forming. As for the Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire, he wasn't surprised at all that Ling Han possessed a spatial god tool. After all, these were far too common in the celestial realm. Moreover, he was clearly a lazy person, as he would rather hitch a ride with the cloud-piercing shuttle and spend more time rather than travel by himself. Anyhow, Ling Han also took this chance to ask him some questions. This further deepened his understanding of the celestial realm. The Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire had been at the Immortal Palace tier at the time, so he was quite familiar with many aspects of the celestial realm. However, there were also many things that he didn't know about. This was due to the limitation of his cultivation level. Why did so few people come to the ancient realm from the celestial realm? After all, there were clearly vast expanses of land here. Why didn't they conquer this land? The answer to this was simple: the celestial realm itself was also boundlessly large. In the celestial realm, the units used to describe different forces were in terms of cities, and each of these cities was as large as a great star. In fact, some colossal cities were as large as an entire galaxy. Thus, just the territory of the celestial realm was already enough for them to battle over. As such, very few people saw any value in conquering a barren place such as the ancient realm. Moreover, why was the celestial realm called the celestial realm? This was because the celestial realm contained an undying divine essence. This divine essence was the key to achieving immortality. If one left this environment for too long, they would suffer an irreversible process of having their lifespan severed. Thus, even celestials would become no different from ordinary Genesis tier saints. To sacrifice one's life for the sake of conquering some land that was next to useless? Who would do something so utterly stupid? Indeed, those who entered the ancient realm were all members of the younger generation who hadn't reached the severing mundane tier yet. They needed to rely on the help of their clan to push them into the ancient realm. Moreover, their purpose for coming here was primarily to train. In addition to that, they would also search for the treasures that had been lost in the ancient realm during the great turmoil of yore. For example, Han Chi had come for these exact purposes. However, even the Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire wasn't aware of the reasons behind the great turmoil. According to rumors, it was instigated by the Celestial Kings, and thus only the Celestial Kings would know of the true reason. 2 years passed, and the cloud-piercing shuttle arrived on Wood Figure Planet. The Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire had just attained rebirth, so he immediately sprinted off to explore the land. He was a small saint, and his battle prowess could rival that of medium saints. Moreover, he could easily escape and flee even if he came across a great saint whom he couldn't defeat. Thus, Ling Han wasn't worried about him at all. "Ling Han, let me out," the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden suddenly said through the Black Tower. Ling Han let the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden out, only to suddenly discover that her aura was incredibly wild and turbulent. His expression involuntarily changed. She was about to break through to the Genesis tier. Chapter 1622, Becoming a Saint One After Another. The Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden had received the inheritance of the 3 Phoenix Kings, and this had elevated her bloodline to the pinnacle level of the immortal realm. Moreover, she had a constant supply of alchemical pills from Ling Han, and she was also able to comprehend Tao under the reincarnation tree. Thus, there were almost no obstacles hindering her cultivation. As such, how could her cultivation speed not be insanely quick? If they hadn't been held up in the netherworld for 10 years, perhaps she would have reached the Genesis tier even sooner. Now, however, she was finally breaking through after having accumulated her comprehensions and cultivation for so long. She simply smiled at Ling Han before leaping up into the sky. If she underwent her heavenly tribulation here, it was entirely possible that she might obliterate the entire wood-figure planet. Ling Han naturally followed her into the sky as well. Although he wouldn't be able to help her, he still had to remain by her side, and watch her undergo her heavenly tribulation. Boom! Dark thunderclouds formed in the icy cold dark sky above the heavenly phoenix divine maiden's head, and the first bolt of lightning was already fervently striking down at her. The heavenly phoenix divine maiden unfurled her wings that measured a whopping 500 kilometers in length as she looked up to meet the lightning strike. This was bound to be an intense clash. In the blink of an eye, 10 golden paths had already unfurled toward this area as the Star Sand Saint and the other saints made their way over. Upon seeing that it was the heavenly phoenix divine maiden undergoing heavenly tribulation, they were all stunned beyond words. Apart from the Star Sand Saint, the 9 other saints had all attended the disciple recruitment ceremony at that time. However, which of them had held high hopes for the heavenly phoenix divine maiden at that time? If it weren't for the extremely good memory of saints, perhaps they would have already forgotten about this person they had labeled as only having ordinary talent. Indeed, the heavenly phoenix divine maiden's talent had only been worthy of such a label at that time, especially among the sea of prodigies gathered at the Star Sand Martial Arts Academy. However, who could have imagined that someone with such ordinary talent would one day become a saint? In fact, even the Star Sand Saint was slightly red-faced with embarrassment now. At that time, he had chosen Gu Daoyi to become his disciple. Even so, he had expected Gu Daoyi to require at least 10,000 to become a saint. However, how long had passed now? Yet this woman had already reached this stage. It was as if those close to Ling Han were all freaks. It's only been 3 years, yet 2 saints have actually appeared in quick succession. How incredible, the 10 saints exclaimed in emotion. Ling Han was slightly surprised upon hearing this. 2 saints? He strode over, and asked, who else has become a saint? Notionless, the torrential rain saint replied. Oh, the notionless saint has become a saint again. Ling Han didn't find this strange at all. After all, the notionless saint already possessed the complete comprehensions of a saint. Moreover, he possessed a 5-element body now, and he also had an endless supply of alchemical pills. Thus, it was only natural that he had become a saint sooner than the heavenly phoenix divine maiden. It was just that the notionless saint wouldn't have any more past experience to go off now, and as a result, his cultivation speed would become much, much slower. He would definitely be overtaken by the heavenly phoenix divine maiden. In fact, even the Empress and Ling Han would overtake him. Where is he? Ling Han asked. He couldn't see the notionless saint anywhere. He left 1 month after becoming a saint, and no one knows where he's gone, the torrential rain saint replied. He didn't dare to act senior before Ling Han. Of course he didn't. Even the Star Sand Saint had to treat Ling Han as an equal, so if he dared to act senior, then wouldn't he be looking down on his own master? Ling Han frowned upon hearing this. He was aware of the notionless saint's will to exact revenge on his 3 traitorous disciples. However, the notionless saint had also mentioned before that after so many years, his 3 disciples had most likely all become saints already. As such, victory wasn't assured if he went by himself. However, he had set off already, so it wouldn't make a difference regardless of how worried Ling Han felt. He could only hope that the notionless saint wouldn't come across any troubles. In any case, he was a small saint, so it would be extremely difficult for others to kill him unless he stubbornly battled to the death himself. Boom! Heavenly tribulation was devastating, and this was more so the case for those advancing to the Genesis tier. After enduring this heavenly tribulation, one would receive the recognition of heaven and earth. In some way, this signified that they were the envoys of heaven and earth. Thus, this tribulation was extremely difficult to overcome. Fortunately, the heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden had received the inheritance of the 3 Phoenix Kings, and thus her battle prowess was far superior to what it was before. She was able to withstand her heavenly tribulation with ease. Half a day passed, and her heavenly tribulation finally came to an end. The heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden immediately unfurled a golden path and went to Ling Han's side. Although she had still suffered some minor wounds, they were of absolutely no significance. "Congratulations, fellow cultivator," the 9 small saints said to the heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden as they clasped their hands in congratulations. Since she was already a saint, they naturally had to treat her as an equal. The heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden nodded with a modest smile. She wasn't as proud as the Empress, and she was still fairly polite toward other people. Right now, she appeared timid and gentle as she stood beside Ling Han, and this caused the other saints to all feel envious. It was already difficult enough for one to become a saint, much less find a partner who was also a saint. Ling Han was bound to become a saint, and at that time, both husband and wife would be a saint. This was incredibly rare. "Ling Han," the Empress suddenly called. Ling Han's expression involuntarily became strange. "It can't be this coincidental, can it? You're also going to break through?" he asked with his divine sense. The Empress replied with a nod. "I was right." Ling Han waved his hand and let the Empress out of the Black Tower. The Empress immediately took a step, striding to where the heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden had endured her heavenly tribulation just then. Rumble. The thunderclouds that had just disappeared started to gather above her again. Star Sand Saint. 9 small saint. Do saints come wholesale in your family? They're going to endure heavenly tribulation one after another? Thinking back to the past, which of them hadn't needed to experience countless years of cultivation and accumulation? Only then had they been able to release all of their accumulated comprehensions at once and break through to become a Genesis tier saint. However, it was as if these young cultivators were on steroids, enabling them to break through to the Genesis tier in quick succession in just a few dozen years. To compare themselves to these people would indeed drive them nuts. "This." The Star Sand Saint suddenly exclaimed. The heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden's heavenly tribulation had been extremely ordinary. However, something was slightly off now. This woman's heavenly tribulation appeared to be far too terrifying. In fact, it was so terrifying that even he felt a cold chill run down his spine. Meanwhile, the 9 small saints involuntarily took a step back. This heavenly tribulation was yet to fall, yet their hair was already standing on ends in apprehension. Crack. The first bolt of lightning crashed down, transforming into a humanoid war god as it did so. Upon materializing, it immediately thrust the spear in its hand toward the Empress. Gasp. The 9 small saints were stunned. This strike is enough to kill any of us. Just how powerful were they? Even medium saints would find it incredibly difficult to kill them with a single strike. Doing so would require a great saint. No wonder the Star Sand Saint had exclaimed in astonishment. This heavenly tribulation was on the level of great saints. Heavens! Is this really a heavenly tribulation for someone who's only just advancing to the Genesis tier? If the 9 saints came across a great saint, they would still have the ability to flee even if they were unable to rival them. However, heavenly tribulation was a test from heaven and earth. Who could escape this test? To face the attack of a great saint as a small saint would only yield one result: death. However, the Empress was completely unafraid as she flipped her slender hands and unleashed celestial technique after celestial technique to clash with her heavenly tribulation. In fact, she showed no signs of struggle. The saints were rendered speechless upon seeing this. You've only just become a small saint, yet you're already rivaling the attacks of a great saint? Is there still any sense in this world? Just then, they had still been thinking about how they had missed the biggest gem in the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden. Now, however, they realized that they had missed an even bigger gem. This was a supreme prodigy that even Gu Daoyi had absolutely no hope of matching. Crack, crack, crack. Bolts of tribulation lightning continued to crash down, forming more and more humanoid bolts of lightning. Each of them possessed the power of a great saint, and they were more so impossible to completely destroy. They would immediately regather upon being smashed apart, and it was clear that they were indestructible and undying. When the number of lightning humanoids reached 50, they finally underwent a qualitative change, and were able to completely suppress the Empress. Humph. The Empress shot a piercing gaze at the lightning humanoids. Swish, swish, swish. Several figures leaped out from within her. These were her 9 doppelgangers. The 10 empresses then immediately started to fight their heavenly tribulation together. Chapter 1623, Reverse Domination. This was truly a spectacular sight to behold. There were a total of 60 saint-level individuals locked in this intense battle, and they were more so all at the level of Great Saint. To say nothing of the Tranquil Heart Saint and the other small saints, even the Star Sand Saint was absolutely stunned by this sight. He knew that if it were him in that battle, he would most definitely be killed. In other words, he was already no match for the Empress. Good heavens! Although he was only at the early stage of the Great Saint, the Empress had only just become a small saint. Just how large was the gap between great saints and small saints? Only Ling Han knew how extraordinary the Empress truly was. To say nothing else, just the fact that she had formed 10 million heavenly bodies was already astounding enough. What kind of concept was this? If her battle prowess weren't heaven-defying as a result, who would waste their time to cultivate to the pinnacle level? The appearance of the Empress' 9 doppelgangers didn't simply elevate her offensive power. At the same time, each of her bodies could spread the damage that they received over the 9 other bodies. Simply put, this was equivalent to weakening Heavenly Tribulation's attacks by a factor of 10. With her offensive power strengthened and the damage that she received weakened, the Empress immediately gained an absolute advantage over her Heavenly Tribulation. Half a day passed, and her Heavenly Tribulation finally disappeared. The Empress stood proudly, a look of disdain in her eyes as she gazed at the sky. Her domineering demeanor was as if she would beat the heavens without hesitation if it had a physical form. In the next instant, however, she immediately went to Ling Han's side, a bright and beautiful smile blooming on her face. This smile could intoxicate even saints. However, which of the saints dared to have any improper thoughts about her now? Congratulations, fellow cultivator, the Star Sand Saint said. Gasp. Even the Star Sand Saint was referring to her as fellow cultivator. This signified that he completely acknowledged the Empress' strength as equal to his. In reality, the Empress was even more powerful than him. Congratulations, Senior, the 9 small saints said respectfully. They bowed their heads slightly as they clasped their hands in congratulations. The sky was filled with an aromatic fragrance at this moment, and this was an expression of joy from heaven and earth. A saint had been born, and they could inherit and convey the will of heaven and earth. The Empress wore a proud smile. She couldn't care less whether these people congratulated her or not. In her world, she only needed that one person. As for the others, she wouldn't even spare them so much as a glance. Thanks everyone. Ling Han thanked the saints for the Empress and the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden. The 10 saints were all extremely envious of him. Not only did he have a saint as a wife, but he even had another. In fact, he actually had 3. Hunyo had already become a saint long ago, and she was currently cultivating in the celestial realm. Moreover, even Zhu Xian'er and Lu Yutong, with their ordinary talent, also had chances to become a saint. Thus, it truly wasn't anything special for Ling Han to have saint-tier wives. Ling Han returned to Wood Figure Planet with his 2 wives. Upon learning that the Empress and Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden had become saints, the Rain Emperor and the others were all overjoyed. However, they also felt immense pressure at the same time. They were men, so how could they be surpassed by women? And two at that. A grand feast was held, and the entire martial arts academy was celebrating. 2 saints had appeared in quick succession, so was this not impressive enough? Zi Chenfeng, second in the world, and Hong Ma all sighed with emotion. Not long ago, they had still been able to fight toe-to-toe with Ling Han. Now, however, 2 of his wives had already become saints. Moreover, Ling Han had even killed 2 saint kings by himself. Just how humongous was the gulf between them now? When this gap had been small, it could still spur them on to chase after him. However, when this gap grew to become an insurmountable gulf that they could only look up to, who would still have the blind confidence to chase after him or surpass him? The grand feast lasted for an entire 15 days before it finally came to an end. Even Ling Han felt a bit tired after all this celebration. He told himself that he would definitely have to keep it low-key when he advanced to the Genesis tier to avoid all this hassle. However, upon remembering that he still had the mesmerizing Empress waiting for him to taste, his heartbeat couldn't help but quicken. He lightly walked into the Empress room. The Empress was currently sitting in front of a mirror and applying makeup. She was already breathtakingly beautiful, and with a small bit of makeup, she didn't become any more beautiful. This was because she had already reached the pinnacle level of beauty. However, her seductiveness did indeed go off the charts. Ling Han involuntarily gulped in excitement. He walked over and wrapped his arms around the Empress' slender waist, saying, "I'll do your eyebrows for you." The Empress smiled at him through the mirror, and her smile was like tens of thousands of flowers in full bloom. She handed the eyebrow pencil to Ling Han before turning around to face him. Her starry eyes were like water, and her cherry lips were like fire. Beneath her pale neck, one could vaguely discern the magnificent curves that were enough to make one palpitate with excitement. Ling Han raised the eyebrow pencil, yet he couldn't bring it to the Empress' brow no matter what. There was no wine to intoxicate him, yet he had already become drunk. He had been intoxicated by the Empress' mesmerizing charm. He tossed the eyebrow pencil aside and used his fingers to lift the Empress' chin. He lowered his head, and passionately locked lips with her. As if the heavenly thunder had stirred the earth fire, a blazing intensity overtook them as they started to passionately kiss each other. At the same time, their hands moved up and down as they started to remove each other's clothing. Ling Han was extremely fervent. He had already endured for 100 years, and he was so thirsty that his heart was almost about to melt. He scooped the Empress up and placed her on the bed before pouncing on top of her like a wild beast. However, just as things were getting steamy, Ling Han suddenly stopped. The Empress moaned softly. She opened her starry and watery eyes. Ling Han couldn't help but feel awkward, saying, "I've reined myself in so many times that I'm not even sure how to continue." The Empress involuntarily chuckled. She then suddenly flipped around and pressed Ling Han beneath her, becoming a cowgirl. "No, I can't be reverse dominated by you the first time." Ling Han tried to resist and take the lead again. However, just how powerful was the Empress now? She could suppress those at the early stage or even middle stage of the Great Saint, so how could she not suppress Ling Han, who only possessed the battle prowess of a small saint? Ling Han could only struggle in vain. After a while, the Empress' silky hair started to billow in the air as she started to rock back and forth like a cowgirl. A feeling of immense pleasure swept over Ling Han, and it was as if all of his bones were about to melt. However, he was also feeling slightly vexed. He had actually been reverse dominated. Reverse dominated. The aroma of love filled the room as they passionately made love with each other. The next morning, Ling Han opened his eyes with incredible joy, only to see the Empress curled up in his lap like a small cat. He couldn't help but chuckle upon seeing this. He hadn't imagined that the Empress would look like this when sleeping. Although they had already become husband and wife since long ago, Ling Han had never slept with her before for fear of accidentally going too far too early. However, his breathing suddenly quickened again. Under the thin sheets, he could see that the Empress wasn't wearing anything at all. Her naked body instantly aroused his lust again, and he eagerly tossed aside the sheets before pulling them over again. A rhythmic movement appeared under the sheets, accompanied by the cat-like moans of the Empress. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. Ling Han and the Empress hadn't left the bed even once. It was as if they yearned to make up for their 100 years of pent-up passion. They stared at each other lovingly, and they were preparing to make love if they weren't already in the process of making love. Half a month passed, and the heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden finally couldn't hold back any longer. She walked in to get the two of them out of bed, yet the price she paid for doing so was being dragged into bed by Ling Han. What ensued was a steamy and passionate threesome. She was embarrassed to death, yet the Empress didn't mind at all. She would throw her full support behind it as long as it made Ling Han happy. However, their number one priority right now was cultivation, and they would still have heaps of time to enjoy themselves in the future. After all, they still couldn't be regarded as the most powerful beings of the ancient realm. Saint Kings were still huge mountains that were insurmountable to them. The Empress and Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden both entered the Black Tower to cultivate. They needed to stabilize their cultivation level. Meanwhile, Ling Han also needed to reach the true pinnacle of the Eternal River tier as soon as possible. When he succeeded, he would then proceed to advance to the Genesis tier. The Empress had displayed to him the formidable battle prowess that 10 million heavenly bodies could bring, and this was something that he strongly yearned to obtain. Previously we spelled them Zhu Xian Er and Lu Yutong, respectively, but that's the fad in Singapore and some other places, and the current spelling is the mainland China one. Chapter 1624, The Zhong clan has come. Time slowly crept by. In the blink of an eye, another year had already passed. Both the Empress and the Heavenly Phoenix Maiden had completely stabilized their cultivation. The Empress' cultivation was especially terrifying, and the level of her origin power had already reached the peak stage of the small saint. Her 10 million heavenly bodies already couldn't evolve anymore. During the past year, she had spent almost all of her time cultivating under the reincarnation tree. She would only occasionally leave to make love with Ling Han. Under the reincarnation tree, 1 year was equivalent to over 3,000 years. Add to that the divine fetus of the Empress, and her comprehensions were able to completely catch up to her cultivation level. At this moment, she had truly reached the peak stage of the small saint. This was an unfathomable speed. Moreover, it could be seen that although her advance had been slow before, she had actually been accumulating experience and comprehension. By releasing her potential at once, she was able to easily soar to the peak stage of the small saint, and shift her target to the level of medium saint. Right now, the Empress could even rival those at the peak stage of the great saint if she unleashed her full battle prowess. She could surpass 8 stars. As for the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden, she was nowhere near this level. Although she had received the inheritance of the 3 Phoenix Kings, her cultivation speed still slowed down after she advanced to the saint tier. Right now, she was still at the early stage of the small saint, and was a considerable distance from reaching the middle stage. Meanwhile, Ling Han had set off on his path of frenzied breakthroughs. He didn't forget to swallow pills every day, and he had also continued to accumulate his origin power. Right now, he had already formed a staggering 6 million heavenly bodies. However, he would still need around 3 years to reach the maximum number of 10 million. This was already the fastest he could advance, unless there was some saint pill that he could wantonly take. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to advance any quicker. The others had also improved greatly, like the Rain Emperor who had already advanced to the pinnacle level of the Eternal River tier. He was also aiming to form 10 million heavenly bodies. In fact, the biggest surprise was the large black dog, who had actually become a saint. This detestable dog had actually become a saint. Not only did Ling Han find this strange, but everyone else also found it strange. Moreover, almost every student would grind their teeth in frustration and anger at the mention of the large black dog. After all, the large black dog was far too sinister and detestable. He found great joy in deriding others, and he had completely no morals to speak of. Not only that, but he had also found two new subordinates, now a rabbit and an old ginseng. The three of them caused endless turmoil in the martial arts academy. Afterward, the Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire also joined this strange group. The appearance of this child saint caused everyone's jaws to drop to the ground. Fortunately, they quickly learned that the Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire was actually the reincarnation of a saint. Even so, they were still shocked that he was able to recover his Genesis tier cultivation so quickly. In the end, however, this was at least still within the bounds of what they could accept as reasonable. At any rate, the appearance of 5 saints in just a few short years shattered the long-standing rumor that only one disciple of this generation could become a saint. Thus, all of the disciples found a renewed vigor. It didn't matter that their cultivation speed was a little slower, as they still had a sliver of chance to become a saint. On this day, a golden path suddenly materialized in the sky, bringing with it a saint. The saints of the Martial Arts Academy all came out to meet this unexpected guest. After all, a saint could cause huge amounts of damage if they suddenly launched an attack. Moreover, in terms of escape, small saints wouldn't be any inferior to saint kings. Thus, they had to be extremely cautious. However, this saint was none other than the Notionless Saint. Ling Han immediately went out to greet the Notionless Saint upon hearing of his arrival. However, he saw that the Notionless Saint looked extremely weak and fragile. It was clear that he had suffered severe wounds. What happened? Ling Han asked with a frown. After so many years together, he already viewed the Notionless Saint as a teacher and a friend. Thus, with his personality of protecting those close to him, he was naturally enraged upon seeing the Notionless Saint in such a sorry state. The Notionless Saint sighed, and said, "I left to seek revenge on my 3 traitorous disciples immediately after becoming a saint." However, the results naturally weren't great. At Ling Han's questioning, the Notionless Saint revealed that one of his disciples had already died countless years ago after failing in his attempt to become a saint. However, his 2 other disciples were extremely talented, and they had not only digested his previous fruits of cultivation, but they had even surpassed him to become medium saints. He had failed to exact revenge, and had even ended up being hunted himself. If it weren't for the fact that saints all possessed similar speed, his fate would have been much worse than just getting some severe wounds. It would have been extremely likely that he would have been killed. He had bitterly waited for countless years and finally become a saint again, yet his desired revenge seemed just as distant as before. This naturally caused him to feel frustrated. Seek revenge after advancing to become a medium saint? He wasn't confident that he could do so. After reaching the saint tier, just how difficult was it to advance another minor tier? How many hundreds of millions of years had passed? Yet his 2 disciples had only just advanced to the level of medium saint. If he wanted to catch up to their progressive that were even possible would need at least hundreds of millions of years. You need to have faith in yourself, Ling Han said as he patted the Notionless Saint's shoulder. Once I reach the saint tier, I'll make sure to research saint-level alchemical pills and refine some that can increase one's cultivation speed. I'll make it so that you can pummel your 2 unworthy disciples. This kind of bitter resentment naturally had to be resolved by the Notionless Saint himself. Relying on the power of others would dampen his ability to vent his anger. The Notionless Saint nodded upon hearing this. He was quite confident in Ling Han's abilities. At the same time, he couldn't help but sigh in emotion. At that time, just how correct had his decision to follow Ling Han been? He had not only regained his cultivation as a saint, but he even had the chance to advance to the level of medium saint or great saint. Several days passed, and another golden path unfurled through the sky. The Star Sand Saint and the other saints all felt slightly irritated. Should they erect a sign outside Wood Figure Planet, warning miscellaneous saints to stay away? They were arriving one after another, and it seemed like there was no end in sight. Wang! An overwhelming aura swept through the sky. This newest arrival was no small saint. Humph! The Star Sand Saint humphed in displeasure as he immediately pushed back against this aura. I'm Zhong, from the Open Clouds Forbidden Land, an incredibly haughty and arrogant voice announced. There was an air of superiority in his voice. You're merely a medium saint. Don't you understand common courtesy? The Star Sand Saint asked. The golden path disappeared, revealing a middle-aged man. He was tall and lightly built, and his appearance was also extremely handsome. His hands were clasped behind his back, and it was clear that he was unafraid of the Star Sand Saint. The ancestor of my clan is a Saint King, and I've specifically come here on the orders of our ancestor. By looking down on me, are you also trying to look down on my ancestor? Is that your intention? The Star Sand Saint felt extremely frustrated. Having a Saint King as an ancestor was truly magnificent. If he were a lone cultivator, he naturally wouldn't allow a medium saint to act all high and mighty before him. He would definitely teach him a lesson as he saw fit. However, the Star Sand Martial Arts Academy was his blood and sweat, and it was something that he couldn't sacrifice or abandon. Thus, he didn't explode in anger, only asking in a grave voice, "For what reason have you come?" "Tell the detestable brat Ling Han to come out," Zhong said coldly. This brat had actually dared to kill a member of the Open Clouds Forbidden Land. Humph. The Star Sand Saint was at a loss for words. Why is it that troublemaker again? He couldn't help but accept the fact that Ling Han was far too good at causing trouble. For example, he had never seen a Saint King a dozen or so years ago. However, ever since Ling Han's arrival at the Martial Arts Academy, it was as if Saint Kings had suddenly become run-of-the-mill. They appeared before him one after another. Generally speaking, it was almost impossible to come across Saint Kings, much less offend them. But Ling Han? He somehow managed to offend such beings on a regular basis. What kind of physique did he possess? Did he bear some innate grudge against Saint Kings? "Oh, the Zhong clan has finally come to seek me," Ling Han said with a chuckle as he appeared. Standing beside him were the Empress and the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden. A medium saint had arrived, so they were naturally worried about Ling Han facing him alone. Zhong immediately looked toward Ling Han, and his pupils involuntarily contracted as he did so. Ling Han looked just like he did in the memory image. This was a junior who had yet to advance to the Genesis tier. Chapter 1625, Hand the Evil Brat Over. This was inconceivable. A cultivator at the Eternal River tier had actually killed a saint? Where was the iron rule of the martial arts world? However, this brat only possessed battle prowess at the peak stage of the small saint. Thus, killing Zhong Badu was already his upper limit. He would naturally have no chance of victory against a medium saint. Indeed, he had been sent flying by a smack from the ancestor of the Long tribe before. Zhong stared at Ling Han coldly, and said in a haughty voice, "Since you've already seen me, hurry up, kneel down to accept your death." Ling Han laughed, and said, "Do you understand reason or not?" "Reason?" Zhong said with a cold chuckle. "I'm a medium saint, so what I say is reason. In any case, you killed a member of my Zhong clan, so how can you still wish to live?" The Zhong clan was weaker than the other Forbidden Lands as it had only existed for a shorter period of time. There was only one Saint King in their clan, and they didn't even have a great saint. Apart from Zhong, there were only 2 other medium saints and 4 other small saints. Thus, Zhong Badu had naturally been an extremely important member of the Zhong clan. Moreover, he had possessed the potential to easily become a saint, and even the potential to perhaps become a Saint King. Now, however, he had died at the hands of Ling Han. Ling Han had to die. Not only him, but those close to Ling Han all had to die. If he didn't massacre these people and form a sea of blood, how could he prove the might of the Open Clouds Forbidden Land? However, there was a great saint here, so he wouldn't target the other people just yet. He would only suppress and capture Ling Han this time, and take him back to the Open Clouds Forbidden Land to perform a blood sacrifice. The Open Clouds King would then personally come here to exterminate all life on this planet. The might of Forbidden Lands couldn't be challenged. Those who dared to challenge it would invite a massacre and an extermination of all life. Ling Han nodded, and said, I feel much more at ease after hearing what you had to say. My favorite thing to do is trample over evil villains like you. The feeling of exterminating evil for the people is so incredibly satisfying. Zhong couldn't help but chuckle coldly, and said, Young man, you think that I don't dare to target you just because you have a great saint beside you? He thought that Ling Han's confidence came from the Star Sand Saint, and he couldn't help but sneer in disdain. Did the Star Sand Saint dare to challenge him? He swept his gaze over the surroundings, and his pupils involuntarily contracted again. There were 2 female saints. Gasp! They're so beautiful. He only glanced at the heavenly phoenix divine maiden for a moment before shifting his gaze to the Empress. His heartbeat involuntarily quickened. She was stunningly beautiful. As a saint, he should have remained composed even if the heavens were to collapse before him. However, his heart was thumping against his chest at this moment, and it was as if he had seen his first love, and as if he were making love with a woman for the first time. His Tao heart was non-existent at this moment, and all that remained was his carnal desire. He wanted this woman. She's your woman? Zhong asked as he pointed at the Empress. She's my wife. Don't have any improper thoughts. That will only lead to a quicker death, Ling Han said calmly. Ha 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 ha. Zhong naturally wouldn't pay any heed to this threat. After all, this woman was only a small saint. Even 1,000 small saints wouldn't be enough to rival a single medium saint. He would be able to suppress all of them with a casual flip of his hands. I've come, the large black dog exclaimed as he suddenly appeared at the scene. There was a child of around 4 to 5 years old beside him, and there was also a rabbit and a ginseng. The rabbit had ruby-red eyes and was half a human tall, while the ginseng was as thick as a human arm, possessed the ability to walk, and also had facial features. This was the famous group of 4 troublemakers of the Martial Arts Academy. Just the mention of their names was enough to instill fear in one's mind. Oi, ugly ghost, why are you seeking my subordinate? The large black dog asked as he stood up on his hind legs. At the same time, he used his paws to scratch his behind, causing a piercing screeching noise as his claws raked against his iron underwear. This sound was horrible enough to make one vomit blood. However, the large black dog was completely unfazed by this, and he even raised his paw to his nose for a sniff. There was a look of intoxication on his face. Zhong couldn't help but grimace. The Open Clouds Forbidden Land was extremely secluded, and thus he hadn't seen many other saints before, especially debauched ones like the large black dog. His entire outlook on the world was about to be warped. Piss off, the Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire shouted as he kicked the large black dog aside. However, he also appeared like a hooligan as he said, This brat is under my protection. What do you want? Zhong grimaced again. Such a young saint. This person had definitely used his divine sense to possess another person. However, possessing others would cause one's cultivation to suffer 2 limitations, one due to the divine sense and one due to the physical body. This was according to the principle of Liebig's barrel, where the shortest stave would decide the final capacity of the barrel. Otherwise, how could there be such a young saint? Just what kind of concept would that be? Even if he had started cultivating in his mother's tummy, how many years would that have added up to? Were the people here all freaks? One had killed a saint as an eternal river tier cultivator, one had reached the saint tier as a 4 to 5-year-old child, and one was an unbelievably detestable dog saint. Woof! Stinky brat, Grandpa Dog is going to bite your bum into 3 pieces, the large black dog exclaimed as he charged into battle against the Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire. Both the child and the dog were extraordinary beings. This went without saying for the Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire. He had been an Immortal Palace tier elite before, and he was skilled in both the regulation of thunder and regulation of fire. His experience was far superior to that of saints, and it was only due to the limit of his cultivation level that he could only unleash a battle prowess equal to that of medium saints. The large black dog was even more peculiar than him, possessing an unbelievably powerful physique that even medium saints couldn't wound. Right now, he was snapping his jaws at the heavenly emperor of thunder and fire's bum. Zhong instantly felt like vomiting blood upon seeing this. This was far too terrifying. Those two were clearly small saints, yet they both possessed the battle prowess of medium saints. In other words, they could easily battle against him head-on. Perhaps he had cultivated in the Forbidden Land for too long, and the outside world had already changed beyond his recognition. However, he forcefully composed himself. This doesn't matter. No matter what, they only possess battle prowess of medium saints. The Open Cloud's Forbidden Land has a Saint King, so mere medium saints won't be of any consequence. Ignorant fool. Zhong said with a sneer. He turned his gaze back to Ling Han, saying, "Evil brat, are you not going to kneel and accept your punishment? Are you forgetting about my presence?" the Star Sand Saint asked. He was unable to hold back his frustration any longer. He was a great saint, yet he was actually being ignored by this person. "Unless you want to provoke the ancestor of my clan, I suggest you remain quiet and obediently stand aside." Zhong didn't give him any face at all. As a member of a forbidden land, did he need to show any respect to other saints? The Star Sand Saint boiled with rage. He humphed and said, "Don't use the Saint King to threaten me. You think we don't have any Saint Kings behind us?" A few years ago, numerous forbidden lands had formed an alliance with Ling Han. Meanwhile, the representative of Ling Han was none other than the Star Sand Martial Arts Academy. As powerful as the Open Cloud's Forbidden Land was, could they become enemies with so many forbidden lands at once? It seems that you're becoming more and more senile. You actually dare to become enemies with my Zhong clan? Zhong couldn't help but sneer in reply. The Open Cloud's Forbidden Land was far too secluded, so how could they have heard about Ling Han's stunning feat of slaying 2 Saint Kings before? In his eyes, the Star Sand Saint was merely making things up to frighten him. The Star Sand Saint felt a strong urge to smack him to death. However, their alliance with the numerous forbidden lands didn't mean that he could wantonly attack anyone that he wanted. The other forbidden lands would only support him if he were in the right. After all, he wasn't Ling Han. The Star Sand Saint was shaking with fury, yet he still forcefully composed himself. He flicked his sleeves and roared, "Scram! Hand the evil brat over and I'll naturally take my leave." Zhong said haughtily. He would capture Ling Han this time, and the Open Cloud's king would personally come to exterminate all life on this planet the next time. There was an icy look in the Star Sand Saint's eyes as he suddenly leaped before Zhong. Was he forcing him to kill a saint? "Move aside." There was a soft shout as the Empress gracefully strode over. She appeared mesmerizing as she walked, yet she radiated with a profound and domineering aura at the same time. You're tuning into the Biyao's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.